started.
I want to welcome everybody. Obviously, this is a work session, Roy City Council work session meeting. We're going to discuss then primarily the 2020 budget. That will be the focus of this work session. Let me just recognize that we have Councilmember Burrell, Councilmember Saxton, and Councilmember Yeoman with us. Both Councilmember Paul and Councilmember Tafoya are not here today. So with that, we'll go ahead and jump into the presentation. And Matt, go ahead.
Thanks, Mayor. All right, well, thank you all for coming out. I know we've had a couple of meetings this month, so hopefully we can make this one pretty quick and easy. But I wanted to provide you guys an opportunity to ask questions if you wanted to in open. I've tried to be pretty transparent with the entire process of getting with council members and just answering any questions that anybody has. But in the last council meeting, as you know, we proposed the tentative budget for 2020. In there we have the 5 objectives. I'm not going to reiterate all those objectives, but really with the objective of what tonight was about is to go in a little bit more detail of the proposed budget. We went through the budget with the fine-tooth comb and picked out areas that people oftentimes have questions with, people oftentimes have conversations about, and just to be able to be open and transparent about all of these topics. And then provide at the very end time for any questions, but feel free throughout if you have any questions about any of the topics, please. So this slide is just basically overviewing of what the general fund is. The general fund is mainly the administration, police and fire, recreation, public works administration. But this is what funds that. As you can see, it's mainly from taxes. It's not uncommon for cities to be funded mainly by taxes in the general fund. That comes from property taxes, comes from sales taxes, it comes from franchise taxes. Property taxes, obviously this year we're not proposing anything above and beyond, so we're taking the certified rate. So that's going to stay that means it's going to stay stagnant, or fairly stagnant. Sales tax, we have the luxury of a really good economy right now because of the 50% population and what with economic development within Roy City, that is going to be projected, as Brian said in the council meeting, we're going to have an increase in that sales tax. Fines and forfeitures, that's tending to go a little bit down. Numbers go like this, and we have to make up the shortfall elsewhere. So really, this is for the expenditure side. As you can see where the city is allocating a lot of this money. Public Works obviously looks really small. The majority of Public Works is going to be funded by utility enterprise funds that we're going to be talking about later. But as you can see, police and fire is a major emphasis in the general fund. They're oftentimes fairly expensive because it's quite a large service. Personnel changes in the budget's oftentimes discussed. One of the things that we're proposing within the budget is for years and years, since 2008 in the downwards economy, they suspended the Public Works Deputy Director position. Ross, as you know, oversees quite a few people. He's one of the few directors that doesn't have somebody. Also, there is a push to bridge the gap. We need to have somebody in place that knows the proper job and how to do it when Ross chooses to leave. We're trying to hold on to him for another 27 years, but I think I could get at least 5 out of him. So, especially with this, if you can really help bridge that, we can do that. But with this, we're eliminating a superintendent position. Kind of back up top here, laser doesn't work on a TV, of course, but back up top here, with the Deputy Public Works Director, we feel like that we have quite a few candidates within the organizations that can fill that, mainly superintendent positions or maybe even foreman positions in the Public Works Department. We don't know quite yet. We have to let the interview process take its course in order to fill that position, but with anticipation of that, we're doing away with the superintendent position, and we'll figure out what's going to happen with that, but we have multiple people that can do those jobs. As you guys know, the police department lost the deputy the deputy chief in the department. With that came organizational change. Chief Marino took away that position, and with that organizational change, he was able to save money, but there's some shortfalls that he has to come up with, and he's chosen a position to have to come up with some of those shortfalls. Some of those shortfalls is with supervisory of animal control and just other administrative responsibilities. So this position is really a way to just shift the workload in his department. Carl's currently working on a job description that you're going to see on the tail end of the budget when we approve it. So you can see that there. Down at the conference at UCMA, we talked about firefighters quite heavily, and one of the things was part-time firefighters. They're having a hard time filling these shifts with the part-timers, so what actually ends up happening is he has to bring people in full-time and cover that with overtime shifts. There was wiggle room in the part-time budget to add these 3 new these full-time positions without adding any increases to the budget. And so that's kind of a trend going on right now. I feel like it's a good idea because it's actually hopefully going to be a money saver in the future. You're not training 35 part-timers, you're not having to outfit 35 part-timers, and you can have a consistent shift in there at all times.
Matt, can I ask
yes.
how many full-time we have right now?
Full-time, 40.
We have 33.
33.
Go to 36.
And so that's the elimination of the part-time fire service. This is not a promotion, this is just a transfer of an employee. With building maintenance, they have an electrician within their department. And that electrician helps the water department, that electrician helps the building maintenance department, helps with the lights, any electrical needs. He's often found at the complex, the aquatic center, doing electrical work. He is certified there. But we're planning on moving him to the public works department. There's just a money exchange there from one department to another, not an increase to the funding of it. But we're thinking that that would work a little bit better so it could be under the direction of the deputy director, that he can allocate that employee's time throughout the organization. Court staff, they have had quite a bit of turnover in the last year. They had 75%, 3 of the 4 people turnover. This is not an added money figure. We're actually considering putting a cashier position. They have part-timers that can work there that's been allocated money, but we're trying to bring in somebody lower so they could come in and fill that daily monotonous responsibility of helping people at the window, that we're not having to bring other people over from the court staff to help that individual. We're not asking for any more money, but we're also, with that being said, there's going to be a part-time position that they can work into to know more of the court duties that's going to be equal without benefits to the current court staff. So the proposed merit and benefit increases, we've talked about the STEP program. To kind of reiterate, one of our objectives of the budget was to continue on with this program. The general employees, meaning Public Works, Parks and Rec, Administration, they can receive a 2% up to a 2.5, depending on how many years they were here or on what level of the pay scale they're at. With that being said, public safety employees would get their 3.75 merit increase. With that being also, with the mayor and council members oftentimes get overlooked, and so I'm proposing a 3.07 merit increase, and what that is just an average increase. I know it's not much. If you look from other cities, mayor and councils put down really, really low, but I think it's important that we keep them or try to move in a direction that they can eventually, over a long period of time, be a little bit more competitive with other cities. I know that you guys do this for the purpose of serving the public, and you do it for by choice in that way, but really you guys deserve much, much more than this because you give so much to the city. There was a 2.6% health insurance increase. With that being said, this is a shared responsibility within the employees. There is the city portion and the employee portion that goes up by about 2.6%. This number came in initially at 4.6%. Our insurance provider was able to GBS benefits was able to talk that down to a 2.6. And so we're very grateful for that. Last year was about I think a 4.5 or a 5% or something like that. National trends are much, much deeper than that. I have to say that this is more of a result of the general health of our employees. We have a lot of physically fit firefighters and police officers and public works employees. Unfortunately, just not a city manager. So, Tier 1 employees for firefighters increased 4.58%. There's going to be a lot more discussion come this next year. This is today's number. This isn't tomorrow's number. There was a couple of bills proposed this year that it's going to be changes to the firefighters' retirement system. I think that's going to benefit the firefighters, but right now they just received a little bit of an increase, partially because of the insurance and stuff like that. Not to get too much in the weeds, but URS says that that's what we get to pay and that's what we pay. So here, the last work session that we had down here relating to finance, we were talking about innovative ways that we could help out the employees without causing too much of a monetary cost to it. And so these are all just ideas. This isn't something that you have to pick D, all of the above. You could pick D, all of the above, but these are some of the things department heads and city staff has came to us and said this could be beneficial to our organization. This actually came from Ogden City actually does it, and some other organizations do it. So what it is it's providing the employees with their birthday off. Oftentimes we think it could come with a high cost, but a lot of the time with like fire, when they take it off, they're not calling somebody else in. This is a day that you have to get approved. I think about one of my old positions in the city as an accountant. If I worked and took a day off, oftentimes they just have to work harder the next day. So it's not like somebody's coming in and filling in that shift. So that was an idea. Firefighters and police, because of their dynamics, they would have a month to be able to pick a day and to choose from, but city employees, the regular city staff, would take it off within that week. This is a current policy, sick leave conversion. The city offers a cash incentive currently if you don't use your sick leave. For a regular full-time employee, it's up to 32 hours a year, but if you take 15 hours, then you have 17 hours that you can convert. Right now, the current policy states that you can roll that sick leave into retirement. The city's paying that out for cash, or you can put it into your annual leave. With that being said, we were talking about that a lot of the city employees were talking, why can't we just have that in cash and have it as more of a bonus at the end of the year? To the city side, it really doesn't make a difference. It's not going to cost us anymore. There's about 22 people that participate this on an annual basis. It's up to the department head to approve it and up to the city manager to approve it. So it has to do with funding as well. So that's another thing that we came up with. This was an idea from the Parks and Recs department. We had a city employee that had got an employee of the month. He went above and beyond the certifications that was required for his position, but he did so because he wanted to improve himself. He didn't do it because he had to, but there's really no movement for him. So the reason why we're looking at doing it with a bonus is because it's not the gift that keeps on giving. It's not a promotion that you're going to have to pay year after year after year. Something like this, what I would like to look into, is making it so it's just not an easy certificate to get. As the more you're paid, obviously, the harder the certificate would get. It's not a certificate that would be necessary for the job, but it's something that would benefit the organization for them to get. Throughout the budget, you can see that training has become a little bit more emphasized throughout everywhere. We have an aging workforce that we're going to have a lot of retirements, and that means a lot of people are going to have to fill some big shoes. And the only way that we can come up to par is train these employees to take on the responsibility when it comes due. And this also empowers that employee, making them feel like we're investing in them as well. This was brought up with the police department, giving admin leave for community service. So given some hours every year that each employee can give back to Roy City. They can go clean a neighborhood, they can go do anything, they can maybe even donate blood. So a lot of the parameters aren't really built into this, but I think when people serve, the people, we're constantly serving the citizens, but if we can step outside of the box of what we're doing today and go serve them personally, I think it would be beneficial to the morale because they would have a little bit more incentive in doing it. So, like I said, this is things that we kind of talked about. This is things that we'd like to further discuss. I like a lot of the ideas. That's why it's in the PowerPoint. We kind of wanted to get some of your guys' feedback with it. I don't know if now's a good time or if you would like to wait till later. Up to you guys.
It's up to you. You're controlling the discussion, so.
I would like to get some input to see if you're liking them all, or if you're liking some of them, and we can pursue some of them, or just the general ideas.
Okay, I'll go first. I always feel that anytime that you're increasing an employee's knowledge in their job or even outside of their job, I think it's very beneficial to an organization. So I like the increase to the training budgets because I think in the overall and long term, that will benefit, Roy City the best. I think then if you're looking at sick leave conversion off for cash payouts, I think that's a good one too. Birthdays off, we all would like our birthday off. I think that's kind of like if we want to go that route, we can. But I think the two that actually will really benefit the overall organization as Roy City is I like the cash out and the increase of the training budgets.
I don't have a problem with any time we're supporting our employees. The question I would have on the bonuses and the community service would be how to develop a plan of keeping that equitable.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, everybody thinks they do community service, and so, who manages that, who monitors that. And you don't want to be monitoring it for monitoring purposes, but you also want to be able to say, it really is benefiting the city, it really is benefiting your organization for you to be doing that. Same thing with the certifications. I mean, there's a bazillion certifications out there, but how, I almost would like that if you were requested to look at a certification, then maybe we offer the bonus. If you just say, I want to go do it, then maybe that's on your own dime.
And maybe that's what we could do as a department, and
I
have
don't
further
know.
discussions with that, and then bring it back to the table and show you where we can.
I mean,
offer
obviously,
these
I want
certifications.
training everywhere. I mean, so the certifications is always going to benefit us on that.
Let me ask a couple of questions on that.
Sure.
So we can zero in on this. First thing is that the leave conversion is a little confusing to me. Can the person accrue as much sick leave as they earn through the life of their retirement? Or do you
Yeah.
put a cap on the amount of?
There is not a cap on the amount.
And
It's
then-
not paid out fully though.
And there's a provision within the personnel policy that says that at the end of that period, whatever that period is, they will get a certain percentage of their sick leave they will sell back to the city, and the city will pay them.
Correct, yep.
And the difference then would be is that if they earned it 20 years earlier, they get paid out at the current salary.
Correct, so the liability is decreased, yep.
Okay. And then, last but not least, Ross, you had a comment in the budget that said this, correct me if I'm wrong. You said in terms of road maintenance, you said in the budget that the emphasis now will be on resurfacing, but there won't be a lot of infrastructural changes, because if I remember right, you had over $1 million of requirements that were not going to get funded in this budget.
That's going to be, yes, $1.5 million was cut out of the utility enterprise fund water budget. That is correct.
That's water lines.
Yes, more for water lines, not for roads.
Yeah, I was more concerned about funding that you could do out of the general fund. I know you basically spend a lot of money out of the franchise funds, But that wasn't going to limit you if you had extra money in the general fund to be able to do infrastructure improvements. It's just that you focus a lot of your infrastructure improvements using the enterprise funds. But you could use funds out of the general fund if there was available to you.
I gotta go back to that sick leave conversation for just a minute. So how, can you tell me about that? Can you tell me a little bit more how that currently, I'm sorry to.
Yeah, no worries. So how it works is if an employee, they accrue, I think, 96 hours a year, and they get a portion, if they do not use that sick leave, they can sell back 1/3 to the organization. So 96 hours, 1/3, 32 hours. And so that 32 hours can either be converted into annual leave, or it can be paid out into a 401, 457.
And that is the current program?
That is the current program, yes.
So the requested is that?
Is that there's going to be a third option saying that they can get it paid out into cash. Because there's an option to pay it out in a 457, but they would get penalized if they took that out into cash.
But only 32 hours of it?
Only 32 hours, correct. So it's
Okay,
sticking
because
with the same policy.
Not use
Go ahead.
and have any when it comes time for
Matt?
retirement.
Or not have any
Any
when it
at all.
comes time to have a surgery?
To add to
Right.
that, I believe you can't even start doing it until you've
Correct.
required a minimum number of hours.
Yes, you have to
Like,
require
be
minimum number. That is
Okay,
correct as well.
okay, then
So
So
that-
you have to
that's a
have
concern.
upwards, I think it's 340 hours in order to be eligible in the first place, or 240, 340, one of the two, off the top of my head, to be eligible in the first
So
place.
320 would be 40 days.
Yeah, so it's quite a bit of sick leave that you have to accrue up to, and it does get paid out at the time, like you were saying, Mayor was saying, that it limits the liability and pays it out now instead of waiting until they retire at that higher limit. And it also, so it's beneficial in that regards as well.
Okay.
Now, weren't you also saying with it that it actually will decrease like the amount of sick leave that our
Correct.
employees are taking, because then that way they'll be
There's
able to.
incentive.
An incentive, yes, so they're
there's-
being at work, being productive.
Because we have a lot of employees that don't take a lot of time off, and they don't want to convert it into their annual leave because that's just that much more time that they have to take off. It's hard for a lot of employees because they're busy that they don't want to. So they get it, we call it use or lose, at a 4-weight limit that they have to take off, and that would compound the issue. But the retirement, a lot of the mentality is, a lot of people like to save for retirement, but a lot of people like the dollars today.
So let's just okay, let's go back to birthday off.
Okay?
So is that one basically is no additional cost, or how do you look at that cost?
We did not add a monetary value to the budget for it.
Okay,
We're saying that departments are going to have to use their discretion to allow them to take off, and other employees are going to have to make up the shortfall for that. And so we're not calling in overtime shifts, we're not calling in part-timers to do that position, we're making other staff members, like let's say Camille's utility department, if there's 4 office members in there, if one takes a day off, such as this, such as annual leave, sick leave, the other 3 employees are making up the shortfall there.
So I guess I would ask about our police and fire. Can they do that? Do you have the ability to do that?
Yeah, that was kind of the issue of allowing us to do it in the month time frame instead of the week. Was so with our fire guys, we would give that time to be able to take that off and work that out so it wouldn't affect.
You could do it without overtime?
Yeah.
Without it being
Yeah.
monetary stress?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So how many man days or how many man hours per year are you expecting the city would lose by doing that?
We have about 150 full-time staff members times A.
So take 150 full-times times by 8 hours, so that typically an 8-hour shift. And that's how many man hours of labor that we would absorb, okay? Roughly about 800, 900 hours.
No, 1,200.
No, it's 12. Right?
Yeah, about that.
Yeah.
But if it's absorbable rather than
Yeah.
paid
You're-
out?
Yeah, you're absorbing it through the year versus all at once.
Well, I don't disagree with the logic. I guess my comment would be is that this is a tough conversation, is the purposeness of them would be as an incentive to have people, in essence, I guess, have a birthday. It's more of just recognition. And I guess the question would be is that could you arguably say if you can take almost, I'm doing the math here, if you could take 1,200 hours of labor out of the offices, just 800, not 1,200 hours, that constitutes what, about 3/4 of a person? Are you saying that the city can get along by just removing maybe one person out of staff, even though it's distributed across everybody every year? Because that's about what you're saying.
It's difficult to say one person because you don't have the same person taking off at all times, but I get your point. And I think this is the reason why we're having this conversation here.
I think the question there, though, would be, what do you build in employee morale? Because if you add that in, you can't measure that, you can't weigh it against each other.
Yeah, here's the reason for my comment, Dan, is that we're not going to have the conversation this year, but I promise you next year you will have a conversation about raising the property taxes. And the question you have to ask is has the city leaned out as best it can all of expenses so we don't have a conversation on property tax? There's $1.5 million worth of expenses, projects that will not be funded this year. There's just no money. I've been watching the numbers. It's getting a little worse every time. And if you look at our capital asset expenses, right now, just to give you a perspective, is that in 2017 we have $1.4 million for capital assets. This year we're at $608,000, so we're less than half. At some point in time, we've got to pay for the vehicles, we've got to pay for tools, we've got to pay for all the infrastructure, we've got to keep going. And we also have to pay for an accelerated, at least as you look at the merit, we got to pay for that. And we haven't even talked, Jeff, what's going to happen to that law that's coming through. And all the indication is we're going to change the retirement plan for firefighters, maybe even public safety as a whole. And if that happens, the city has to absorb that increase. There's no choice. It would have happened this year, except the state was not willing to fund that first year. And so now all the indications will probably happen next year. If the state doesn't fund that, then the city has to fund that retirement increase, which is, we've been fighting for that. The only key is we're going to get the money to pay for it. It's the right thing to do. The challenge is going to be is how are we going to pay for that? And the only option I can see, unless there's a change, is you better be thinking about a sale property tax increase. Because next year is going to happen.
I think the hard part, I think the hard part is that if we don't have, even though those capital projects are not going to be funded and those things are not going to happen, you still have to have employees in order to do those capital projects. So we still need to have employees to manage the city. So I think our catch-22 is, yes, we have this over here to be able to, where do we get the money? However, you got to have happy employees. If we don't have happy employees, then the city
doesn't matter.
Yeah, then it doesn't matter.
And I think that's anybody's employee.
To go
I don't
mow
think
the
that's
grass
just
or
city.
to go shovel the walk, we won't have employees to do that.
Well, I don't think, in all fairness, this conversation, giving their birthday off is going to basically say, I don't want my job anymore. What we're saying here is...
But it might make them happy or not happy.
Well, then here's the conversation we need to have then, Jan.
I don't think they're going to quit over it, but I think that, but I want happy employees.
Are you assuming they're not happy today?
I think sometimes they're not.
Why? Because they don't get their birthday off?
I think that we don't recognize them enough.
I think the point of this
But
conversation.
monetary
that's what we're
recognition
looking
is
at.
not necessarily the solution. The experts tell you that. What makes the recognition effective is when, in fact, the supervisor simply indicates to them that there is, in fact, they've done a great job. You can do that by bonuses. You can surely do it by certificates. A lot of times it works if the supervisor steps them in a public meeting and says, you're doing great things. I'm just saying to you, these are great. I'm not taking away, but just recognize the fact is that we're going to pay for this. Now, if you're saying, if you walk out here and says, let's do one of these, or two of these, or three of these to incentivize morale, great, but there will be a bill to pay. The question will be is when you want to pay it.
And the point of this conversation that we were making here is this is not, when the budget is approved, this is not part of the budget. This is coming up with creative ways to give to the employees, because we were talked about that in the past, of saying, what can we do extra above and beyond, rather than just throwing salary increases at them. And so this is just some of the things that we came up in our budget retreat, of different ways that we can incentivize good behavior with something like the bonus certificates, or with the birthday off, just trying to build morale, sick leave conversion. These are just ways that's not approved in the budget, but these are ways that we're just making attempts to benefit the employees.
I mean, I don't.
Without giving them a $5 raise or
Right,
whatever.
right. I mean, we don't work every day with the employees, and so I kind of would like to know from the department heads of these that they liked. I know this came out of your budget retreat, but let's say they were to pick 2 of them, what would be their top 2?
I think we can open up to them.
I like the sick leave conversion, and the increase to budget training is probably my 2 at the top of the list.
Would that be your employees too?
Yeah, I think so.
I think mine would be the same.
I agree.
All right.
I agree. If I had to pick 2, sick leave conversion, and I agree. I don't know if Jan or Carlene said this. When my people are educated, when they're able to go to classes and conferences, it empowers them. I see it when they come back every time. They come back with ideas and philosophies that help this city be a better place. So I would probably echo Jeff and Ross's thoughts and say those 2 as well.
Okay, so I think then from here, we've kind of got a direction. I mean, those are the 2 that I kind of went for.
That's great. I'm happy with that. I mean,
I think we need to now turn to you and look at, okay, if this is this year's budget, how does it look for the future? And you come back with
so
a
when you
plan.
look at increase the training budget,
That was the only one that was actually in the budget right now. That there's different line items as you go through, you're going to see training
Right.
increase. The police department had a lot. We're going to have another slide on that.
and would that be I mean, is there a proposed plan on what that training looks like? Or?
I think every department has their own, the police department in another slide,
Okay.
and I can
Okay.
get to it. I'll
That's
just-
fine.
Yeah.
I'll figure it right now.
I think
Okay.
my employees would be birthdays and sick leave conversion. For me, I would prefer the admin leave for community service and the increased training budget.
So a little bit of difference there.
Yeah, my wife works for a company, and they do the admin leave for community service. Their main branch sets that up on a day, and then they allow employees to sign up to go to that. So it's not something like the individual departments actually sign up and like you go do it on your own. Like I say tomorrow, I'm going to go do this. The department or the city actually sets up what the community service event is going to be, whether it's feed the homeless or whatever they decide they're going to do it, and they allow their employees that day, whoever signs up to go, because some will do it, some won't do it, and that whoever decides they want to go, then they kind of go do that. That's how it's set up through my wife's work, but
Is this a decision we have to make right now? Or is
No,
this
this
something
is
we can
just a
run by-
discussion
this
point
is
because we
catching
talked
some of us
about it.
off-
Yeah, I want to talk to my, I mean,
Talk to our
because
employees to see what they would.
Okay.
I'm just sitting here and
Yeah.
saying, I'm looking at the annual bonus. I mean, it's not how I put it in my budget, but that's actually in my budget. I'm going, I feel bad not bringing that up, being that it's
Yes,
been enough
and
to us that we wanted it in our budget. So I want 3. I want 3 choices.
This came about because Travis was proposing a promotion, and it was because of somebody went above and beyond what they were supposed to be doing. And the problem that we had with it was butting up against other positions, like the master officer we have, that they get a reclassification for that. It's part of the policy with the water department, but with getting their water certifications. But Travis's employees don't have the opportunity to come up with this extra stuff, but it's kind of the problem that we have doing a promotion is it's that limit of always paying that out year after year after year, that you're going to be 5% above. So we were just proposing a bonus structure, and this is pretty subjective, but I think it's a good idea for for the Parks Department where he went out and did these things. But this isn't something that I can go take a class on. This isn't something that is going to take me a couple weeks to get. The Master Gardener program's quite substantial, and we can develop that in the future. This isn't ready to, pass right now. It was just an idea going into the future for us.
Well,
I
I've
like the
always,
idea of creative look at how
Yeah.
to incentivize your employees.
and I've always been one to make sure that we look at the city as a whole and also at the opportunity for all the employees. So if there's departments that have, this additional bonuses for these certifications, and there's other departments that do not, then yes, that needs to be looked at and addressed.
Exactly.
Yes.
So we can readdress that, and that's
Okay.
great. So Travis did mention that there is part of his budget that is equating to a 5% bonus for an individual because he retained these.
For us, and everybody's going to be different there, and my team did a great job assembling this. There's 6 steps that somebody has to obtain to be eligible for this, and they're all fairly substantial, but more importantly, they all make my employees much more knowledgeable and a better resource for this community. It's something that I think we all would agree that, and I'm very blessed to have great employees who work hard, and I think we all are, but want to better themselves, knowing that the more they know, the better they are, the more they can help us, and I just would like to figure out a way to reward that.
Well, so let me ask you a question, Travis, since you opened that door. Your other budgets and the other departments, do you have money in there for bonuses? So all your money just goes for salary. You have nothing in there to provide any incentivize, any bonuses, any recognition, nothing?
Question. Well, actually a couple.
Okay.
First of all, I like most of those, but we probably need to narrow it down faced with what we're going to meet up against next year. That being said, on the previous slide, you had showed a 3.07.
3 for city council and mayor.
Yeah, and we wouldn't have to take that, right?
No,
Oh.
this is a proposal.
Oh, no, I mean,
I just,
even if
Yeah, I agree.
everybody takes it but 2, we don't need to take it.
You don't have, you can turn your check back in, is that what you're saying?
Can you turn the check back
If
in?
you
Okay.
guys aren't a fan of this, we could easily.
No,
Well, if the
I don't
choices-
want
if
to
the choices
see-
were for me was, it
What?
simply says, take that 3.7, you're going to get the council, mayor, and use that to incentivize to help the employees do a better job.
I'd be
I
fine
said-
with
I
that.
would rather
I
not
would-
take the.
I would
that.
rather do that in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
But
And I think it says something to our employees,
Yeah, I
and it
don't
says something
know we
to our,
need- Yep.
to our citizens.
it tells our employees we're wealthy and we
I
don't
don't
care
know
about
that at all.
money. But I'm just, because we're here, I would think, I can't speak for everybody, but I can speak for me. I'm here for the service.
Yeah, I
And,
realize
and
that.
yeah, it's nice to be able to put gas in my car to come to and from City Hall.
Mhm.
But I just, I wasn't expecting, and I would rather have my 3.07 go back to the employees or buy a couple of more bears for Christmas time for Sid's Pond.
I appreciate you bringing that up, Brian. I'm glad that you brought that up because I think that's
I
a
would
good
agree.
suggestion, and I do also agree with that.
Yeah, it's-
But I know it's everybody's call. I don't want to make anybody's mind up for them, and I don't want to look like, oh, look at him. You know what I mean? I've got another job and other incomes.
I would want them to know, though, that there was intent on that. I mean, it wasn't like that got, but I want our employees to know, or somebody to know that was with intent.
I think with that being said, though, we have all the department heads here, and that's the best communication device that we
Sure,
have.
that's good enough.
If they can push that through, and if that's the intention of the council, it's very easy to take that out of the budget. You know, and I realize that you guys are doing it as a public service as well. I see that other you hear oftentimes how low city council members are getting paid here on average from other cities. And I knew that being very, very aggressive with this, it wouldn't be favorable at all. And so this was the only logical thing that we could come up with, of saying that this is on average of all city employees. But with that being said, it doesn't need to happen. If you guys aren't in favor of it, I know that you're not doing it for the money. I know you're doing it for the public service, and we commend you for that as well. So we can make note of that being taken out. So.
Okay, so you've got 3
Yeah, it's true,
council
you've
members
got
You can't
here.
make the
3 here.
decision now, but the final decision
It's up
comes
to
when we approve
Jan.
the budget, correct?
Okay.
Carleen.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd rather push that out.
So with all this being said, really, the only thing that has the financial, my apologies, I forgot that this was an impact to the budget, and this is an impact to the budget. And so with the approval of the budget, this wouldn't be approved, this wouldn't be approved, and this wouldn't be approved. This would be a policy change with a separate resolution. This would be administrative responsibility. So really with the direction, we can have further discussions with all these topics. This was just part of the budget process that we discussed in detail, all these things that I wanted to bring it to your guys' attention as well.
Thank you. Sorry it took so long.
Oh, no worries. Some of the major differences in the budget with operating and costs, as you guys know, we're having an election year. We were counting $32,000. So the legislative budget went up by $32,000, but it's a little skewed because it actually went down substantially because we took another line item out. So that. Also, you're going to see a big shift within the building maintenance budget because we took out a couple of the janitors within the city. They actually left the city, but we replaced them with contractors. It was a substantial amount of money that we saved, but you're going to have to see the shortfall. You're going to see a major decrease in the permanent employee wages, but you're going to see an increase in the professional technical services.
Question.
Sure.
On that election expense, does that include both a primary and a general?
Yes, that would.
So what if we don't have?
Then it would be residual funds.
reduced.
Correct. Yep, so there's no primary, we don't have to pay that. This number is actually, they're projecting this number, I think, $28,000. I looked in the last time's budget of what we spent for the primary, and it was a little over $32,000. Earlier we spoke about the building maintenance electrician that is being moved over to the administration department. One of his primary duties is taking care of the street lights, and so this money is following him. You're going to see an increase of that budget, but you're going to see the same amount decrease from the other budget, so we're not adding anything.
Hey, can I say something about the streetlights? So,
Sure.
where we own all the streetlights, we never did purchase the streetlights when we took those annexations in account. So I don't know if that's something we want to look into, is purchasing the rest of those streetlights. We pay, I know we pay Rock Mountain Power to maintain them, and
It's more of a, yeah,
That's a good point.
so I don't know if that's something we want to.
something we can look into. I've heard from residents down there that says that they don't have as many streetlights on average as Grove City.
Might be worth,
fairly
worth
expensive.
running the numbers to see what that impact would be. Because I think you guys do a really great job in terms of managing the streetlight issues. It's only because you're controlling it. You own it. Where that's not owned by you, that puts a little risk in your ability to be able to manage that effectively. Might be worth to run the numbers.
We look into that. Okay. Talked about this a little while ago. Post with the police department, they're no longer providing training to the police officers, and so it's now the responsibility of Royce City. So oftentimes when Carl would send people out for these training events, they're just not doing it anymore. This oftentimes happens to us, but it's just one of the trends this year. So.
But I think, Carl, correct if wrong, you did add to your budget increase to help cover some of that cost.
I did, yeah.
So this year they're seeing the effects of this. One of their officers is out in military leave, so it's making, so he has a little bit of surplus in the permanent employee wages over there. Not much, but they're able to allocate funds within their department right now to come up with this shortfall. They've been doing transfers all year long to try to minimize that effect. So outside of the Royce City General Fund, you have the Capital Projects Fund. The majority of these projects are being funded within the Capital Projects Fund. Every year, back in 2003, I believe, the property tax increase, one of the allotments in that property tax increase stated that we're going to give $185,000 for for a fire apparatus. That's for fire engines and ambulances. So roughly $155,000 is going to the fund balance to hold there for a future apparatus. $30,000 of that is for the ambulance vehicle. Over the Capital Projects Fund for some of that money, this year we were trying to replace some of the components on a brush truck. However, Jeff needs to use the brush truck now. So we're going to wait till next year to refurbish that brush truck. So that's going to be at the expense of $16,000. You could go buy new. This is actually quite savings than just going buy new. For some reason, the fire station doesn't like it that their roof leaks, so we're going to be replacing their roof. It's at the expense of $12,000. This is Station 32, the smaller one down in West Roy.
What? You're used to filling with water.
Yeah, they like water, don't they?
Yours okay, it's just the mold growing up in the roof that's the problem.
One of the big emphasis of the budget is actually doing some switch-arounds with some of the departments. $25,000 is to remodel the old Weaver County Library. This is just to outfit it with the walls and things. A lot of this might be able to be done in-house. We have some of the staffing to do it, but they'll have $25,000 to be able to remodel the inside of that building. $15,000 to remodel the current recreation facilities. They're going to have more staffing over there. Ross is planning on moving some more people in that and having more of a conference room that people can come in. That building is ADA compliant, so that will be beneficial to Ross. If you've ever been to his office, you have to go through a tunnel and up some cement stairs. So I think that would be beneficial for the organization.
And parachute in.
Yeah, parachute in. Part of the Public Works building down there is actually housing a lot of the mowers and stuff for Travis's department. In order to move the recreation department up there, they'll have to have a place to house their mower. A lot of their real estate down at Public Works is being minimized because Public Works continues to grow and Parks and Rec continue to grow. And so last year in the budget, it was actually proposed to do another building down at Public Works. So I'm grateful that we didn't do that, but that we can do it and relocate.
Okay, so we're looking at a total to do this relocation. 25, 15, and 110.
Yep.
Right.
About 150,000.
178. Oh, no, I
No.
included the
No.
brush truck
Yeah,
Yeah.
no,
and the
okay.
roof. So you,
It's 155, isn't it?
Just 150.
150, yeah.
sorry.
If you walk over to the Hope Center, you'll see out front that there's concrete that's lifting up. This can create hazards for the kids over there, can create hazards for
Seniors.
the seniors over there. There's just a little bit of lippage over there. It's a lot of the stamped concrete, so we're really wanting to replace that. As you've seen, maybe a couple of weeks ago, they were replacing some of the soffit and fascia of the Hope Center. Both of these things were in the budget last year. They were only able to fund the one, so this is the other one that they're able to fund this year. Mowita, Weaver Valley Detention demolition. This is not a new topic. We bought the detention center It's going to be estimated about $337,000 to demolition that. We're sharing the cost throughout the funds, and we try to make it so we're going to house or make the funds pay for it that are going to be utilizing it. It will be beneficial for the organization to have that land because of the lease for the property behind it. Moving on to the utility enterprise funds. The first one being water. We were basing water the last couple of years. They have their annual increase. A lot of these increases, we raise the gallons, the price per gallon. As you see below, I don't know if you can see this very well, but down here, 2 cents, 4 cents, 6 cents, 8 cents. That's to subsidize the increases by we were basing water. Last year's budget session, we talked about an increase to the infrastructure. We talked about increasing it, and we pushed that increase off to January 1st. We're going forth with that increase and making it effective January 1st again for infrastructure. Last year, the effects were about $70,000. This year, about another $70,000. But because it's only 6 months, with a full year of that $70,000, it comes out to about $140,000. This next year, we're going to be really close to being able to having the water meters being installed, and with that money going away as well, that we're not having to fund the water meters. Hopefully, we can get a little bit more aggressive with the approach of replacing water lines. Mayor Dan really suggested, or already said, in the budget it talks about $1.5 million of water lines that was not able to be funded, and it is an issue. We have an aging infrastructure. There's endless work to be had out there. Every time you see a cut in the road, it's a good indication that Ross's guys are out there fixing that water line. So there is a true need to fix that infrastructure.
Let me ask a question on that. Your budget basically indicates effective July 1st. So you're indicating it's actually January 1st?
The July 1st was for solid waste, I believe, and January 1st for water.
Okay. So, okay.
Maybe, do you mind looking at that, Camille? Yeah, Ross would be plenty good with July 1st. It was just because there would only been a 6-month difference between the two.
Okay. Okay.
And there could be multiple spots that there's something that could be mislabeled in it.
Yeah, it's July 1st on the waste management.
Okay.
Or for, like, it's tipping fees, obviously, too.
Yeah, and that we'll talk about that. This one you got all love. Ever since 2015, the rates have stayed pretty level with the stormwater. It's about $850,000. They've been doing a really good job staying within those limits. It's a small department. There's only 3 staff members over there, but they do a fantastic job. Capital assets would include part of the Weaver Valley Detention Center. They are a smaller department, so they're only absorbing 5% of that cost. Down at Emma Russell Park, there is a waterway down there that needs a fence around it. I do have pictures if somebody wants to see that. But it's going to be a shared cost because it is a park, but it's blocking off some of the, like the little pipeway detention basin. So they're going to share the cost of that. There's some need for a new tractor, a bobtail, sander, and a snowplow in that department too.
Back to capital.
Capital projects?
Yeah.
This one? Okay.
We talked, you and I,
Yep.
about getting some kind of flashing, well, to make a deal with UTA for us to buy one and for them to buy one, a flashing yellow for those trails where they intersect with 6, 56, 48, and 44.
Just so you know, UTA's putting one up 4,000 this summer.
They're going to put one there on
Yes.
both sides.
Yes.
Okay.
And I'm putting one on 6,000. I ordered it.
Yeah, we're trying to work toward it.
Okay.
This year, we're seeing if we can fund it within the budget. They did change the way they did it. My understanding is they changed the way that you don't have to mill underneath the road.
Now they talk.
That they can talk to each other electronically, so it dropped the price. This is also a benefit of having an electrician in-house that he can do it and provide the cost for a little bit.
So the only one
So
left is
that's,
4,800.
so that's two that we could possibly do the other one next year, in next
I
year's budget.
I just
Run on
get so many
4,006.
people emailing me and
Yeah.
Facebooking me.
And put it, yeah,
Calling
we can
me.
get another one next year.
Yeah, this
They
has
might
been
be able to
a,
get one at the end of the year if I have money left over.
Cool.
so
There
this
you go,
is-
Brian.
Yeah, this has been a conversation for 6 months or so, asking Russ about the prices and stuff.
Right.
Looking into it, and this is something we would like to get sooner than later. It's not a huge amount of cost to do them. There's quite a bit of money, the residual fund at the end of the year, if we could purchase these things and have our public works department install them.
And then the only other thing was, can we set 1,000 aside and get 3 more lighted bears?
Lighted bears.
Weren't they about 300 each?
Yeah, they're about 350 bucks.
Oh, so about, if we could line item
Oh,
1,000?
The Christmas lights.
Yeah.
You know,
Okay.
You
What do you
think,
do
or do you think
Light
they'll
on
have that?
I think we can make that work.
All right, then let's not line item.
Okay.
Oh, Brian, you got that too.
You
Yeah.
know,
Done and
I can
done.
leave now.
There you
Brian, you
go.
don't think I listen to you all the time when you talk to me.
Which time?
Solid waste utility fund. This is for our garbage. Every year, Waste Management increases the rate per contract. They came in about 3.5 to 4% right now. And so, and then also, we had a tipping fee increase with Weaver County. There's some optimism there with Weaver County making some changes. So in the future, this story could be different. There's a lot of optimism within Waste Management saying that recycle is going to start picking up. So we're not proposing to do anything with the recycling system. We're keeping it status quo. They'll still have their opt-out period in June 30th to July 1st. But they're going to have to, we're going to have to do some rate increases to subsidize some of these increases. Most of it, the majority of it is just flow through.
So I think as long as, I think we put that in like our newsletter or something to let our citizens know, this is not something that we increase, you know, that there is increases in tipping fees. So this will be added to your bill.
Yeah, we can start advertising it once the budget is proposed.
Okay.
We can start putting it in the newsletter. I think now that we have that monthly newsletter, I think that's a great idea. Information technology and risk management, they get funded between a lot of the different organizations and they get funded into these budgets. The total budget for information technology is about $128,000. This includes a lot of the police laptops, access control. We don't have an alarm system in the city, and IT.
Alarm system in like any of the buildings? Like what do you mean?
So,
There's no alarm system
sorry, I
in the
should
city.
be a little bit more specific. The police department in people's different offices, there is buttons for emergency services. This
Okay.
basically shines a light on the police department's wall to respond.
Okay.
Jeff has had problems with an individual coming out there, and there's really nothing he can do other than just call 911 himself. But this would provide a button for Jeff to be able to call, and it would dispatch to the police department to come over to their building. The old system flashes a light on the wall, and if a police officer's not looking at that wall, they have no idea anything's going on. But this also involves the mayor's office, admin office, and a big thing is the justice court. If something's going on in the justice court, 50% of the time, those buttons don't work. And that's actually what initiated this entire process, is Judge Nelson really started talking about it and talking about security. And we made little upgrades to the justice court with the doors and stuff for security purposes. But that was one of the major things, is those buttons just don't work. And if they do, the person most likely to see them is their office assistant, and there's no cops around, or police officers around that area.
No, I
So
agree.
that's really what that
The
bus
way-
system is.
The way society is, we don't ever know who's gonna be walking in with a gun. So, yeah,
And it's weird to walk into a gun into a police station, but.
which is true. However, but the police station's over here, you guys are over here.
Yeah. Risk management budget, $249,000. There's going to be a big decrease in there just because last year, as you guys know, we got away from Irma, but we had that one-time payout to that, to the
And
insurance.
it goes down, yep.
Stormwater development, so impact fees. When you develop land, there's impact fees that causes Roy City to improve certain areas of land. So this is extremely restricted funds here. We can only use it for specific purposes. Stormwater impact fees were up this year because we had a couple of big developments going on. One of them is the care center down there. But when they pay those fees, there was a substantial amount of money put in. But what they wanted to do this year is fund 4,800 south storm drain. If you ever notice when we get a big rainstorm, there tends to be a little bit of water down, accumulating
Burger
down
King.
on 4,800 by Burger King.
Yeah.
The reason why is because they don't have adequate piping below that line. So they're going to improve that piping to let that go through faster. Am I correct? Park development, total budget is $90,000. We've got a couple of things going on. Soccer fields, waterway, the fence that you've seen being split. Emma Russell Park with the parking lights. As you can see, this is all strictly for parks.
Have we, because I know that there was some talk with our parks as far as also some security type systems.
We're playing around with lighting. We think that we can do some stuff by improving lighting in our
Okay.
areas right
Okay.
now.
Yeah, cut down vandalism.
Mhm.
Sometimes when you put a camera, that's
So
just
it's-
another thing to vandalize.
Well, which is true.
But, yeah, there has been problems down at this park, and I think that's why it's.
By the
Have to be a
lights.
real cam?
Yeah. What's that?
They have to be a real cam?
I've seen where they don't, so. Any more questions? This is pretty much it for the general fund. Oh, not the general fund, but the city budget. Cemetery perpetual fund. We do have a cemetery fund. It's remained pretty stagnant in the last couple of years. This account is used to hold residual funds from the cemetery when we sell plots. How that works is when you buy a plot, they typically move 80% of the revenue out. This can be changed in the future, but they usually use 80% out for the general maintenance of the facility or the cemetery, and then 20% is retained for future growth there. So all the plots obviously are gone down there. The city is currently looking at multiple locations, some more promising than others for a future cemetery. So hopefully something can come out from this. We did a study a couple of years ago, and it was said that a lot of citizens like that. So this is really nothing
We
in
bond
the...
it.
What's that?
We gotta bond it.
Yeah, we have to come up with a way to pay for it, and that is correct. Because right now, we do not have,
How much money they sell
Yeah.
the property for.
it depends on how much money we need
When
to
the
sell.
property's appraised, we're going to base it, the plan right now is the city to look at taking the proposed property and doing an appraisal on it. If the appraisal is such that we can work within the budget, we may not have to bond. But the question is going to be is to pay the infrastructure to develop the cemetery. The idea is that we might be able to pre-sell plots. If we can pre-sell plots, we might generate enough funds to give the city the capital to go ahead and make the improvements on the first two or 3 acres.
So you'll do it as a phase?
Yeah.
Incrementally over about a 15 to 20 year period.
So right now, the city doesn't have anything under contract or obligation, so I don't want to put a bunch of fluff in the budget for something that
Something that
we
might or might not
potentially might
happen.
do. Once we get the numbers back on, or even the okay on it, then we start heading down that road of funding. And but right now, it's just looking into different
3,000
avenues, trying to come up with
singles
something.
and most roughly around 5,000 doubles. If you sell those at 600 for residential and 900 for non-residential, you could see a $2 million windfall just in 2 years.
What kind of infrastructure are you talking,
sorry?
watering systems, preventive
Water,
care?
roads,
Yeah.
Stormwater, water, roadways.
Beautification, which, Yeah, so there's, yeah, and really, everybody's guess is as good as ours. We don't know what that is going to amount to until we get to it.
Does West Haven have a cemetery?
Yes, they just got a new one 2 years ago.
Okay.
Redevelopment agency, total budget right now is sitting around $2.4 million. That's the surplus of all the funds as well.
Just keep scrolling.
So the tax increment, what this is the money that Royce City is not putting into it themselves, but the tax increment would be what Royce City would be getting if the RDAs weren't in place. So, just like Royce City not putting the tax increment into the RDA, you have other agencies putting into that RDA as well. So you can see the property taxes being withheld from other agencies at $276, and the tax increment from Royce City at $58,000. We've had a lot of discussions as of late with the board of doing a CRA. These couple, we have two RDAs that we're currently collecting tax increment on, and these are sunsetting within the next couple of years. So what that means is that this 2.4 is going to remain stagnant other than interest. There's not going to be any more revenue. It doesn't leave any room for growth if we're wanting to do something in some of these other CRAs. Some of the, well, to go back, with the tax increment coming in, you see a couple of well, all of you guys really working hard for economic development. There is a need for somebody to be more consistent with economic development. But I'm reluctant to do anything without having that tax increment. If it's drying up and the RDA is not being able to fund some of that, I'm reluctant to do something a little bit more permanent than that.
Right.
Any question?
Yeah, I have a question. What the 300,000, why isn't that only 270? Because you've already got one loan out, and they're already have started repaying the city with interest.
So, back
Does
in
that
the
make
day when they
sense?
did these RDAs, they allocated $300,000 toward a revolving loan fund. So this isn't something, well, they just, in the books it said loan fund. So this is something they allocated toward it. Technically speaking, it's on the books of the RDA is not being expensed. When we give them that $30,000, we give them cash and we book a receivable, which is both an asset on the books. So the number of cash goes down, but the fund balance remains the same. If that makes any bit of sense. So it's a little deep, but really there's no expense to a revolving loan fund. You're actually making money off of the long term.
That's right. Yeah, I
So
knew that.
the reason why the revolving loan fund is an item is because of mainly bad debt, if it doesn't get paid. But again, I'm not anticipating that we don't have $300,000. This was a number set in stone back in the day. And so we're just putting it forth again. And so really, if you look at this year's budget, you see a lot of overages, or not overages of the budget, but surpluses of budget. And you like that to be available, that if you need to do something like we did the last board meeting, that we're able to be able to do it there with the funds available. These funds are fairly restrictive, but we can't do a whole lot with them. We have to be creative in doing it. And so it's not like the city can go build a road with it or something, or anything like that, so. That's all that I have, but I would like to open it up to questions for you guys. If you guys have any questions, feel free. If not, anything?
Can I ask something?
Mhm.
Okay, so beautification, we did it in the legislative budget.
Yep.
Is that its own separate line item?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep. So Not this year, the year before it was its own department. There was no body overseeing that department. This year it's going to be a line item within the legislative budget that we'll just have to control it internally.
Okay.
Let me ask just one question to Public Works and Rec. The acquisition of the library and modification of it. There is a discussion out there in the public that says they don't need a Hope Center to rent. It's too big. They really would like to go back to just having a small room, much like you had in the rec office there to the east. And we used to rent that part of the building out, okay, to the public. It's small, usually a couple of families wide. You throw some tables, they have their dinner or whatever they're doing, they're gone. Obviously, when you renovated that put some risks in that. And I think the other plan was this room is supposed to be earmarked for that. And because of the investment that was made here, the city made a recommendation not to rent this room out. Here's the question. With possibility of the library or possibility of the rec room, and rec moves out and Public Works moves in, is there a possibility that there may still be some room in either one of those facilities that you could segment off and allow then the public to rent that facility? Maybe today's not the question, but could you look at that? The whole center, it's not a cost issue, although it's a little expensive. It's just way too big. And to be honest with you, July is booked, particularly weekends, in large part for Miss Roy pageant. And so people who are wanting to rent space can't find space in Roy City. With this room no longer being rentable, then the only option would be is could another room in one of y'all's new facilities that you're acquiring, could you carve out a space to allow the public to rent that space if you can isolate it from your operation? You can think about that and ask Matt and see if that's something that could be considered. Okay. The only last thing, and Matt, you and I talked about this, and I think maybe as the department heads, I'm just going to ask you this question to ponder. Well, one of the great job satisfactions that I experienced in federal service is that we fundamentally did everything we can to incentivize great ideas. There's no better people that understands what the improvements could be made in the city than the people who work in the city. I mean, they just have some creative ideas. In my world, what we did is we had a suggestion operation. And the purpose of suggestion operation is to allow people to submit these creative ideas, and through the evaluation determine that there is in fact merit to that, reward them typically financially for creating new ways to improve things, whether we're improving processes or whether making the business better, however that is through that process. And what we learned from that is the employees felt more compatible and much better about their jobs in large part because they had a voice in its development, its change. And it was very productive. Let me just make this clear. We have seen areas where these suggestions came through and it literally saved the government millions of dollars in productivity improvements brought about by just people's imagination and ideas. And we've oftentimes rewarded them tens of thousands of dollars. And when that happens, they typically flew back to headquarters in Wright-Patterson, and on a couple of occasions, all the way back to the Department of Defense and the Pentagon, because the savings was incredible, okay? But here's the key I want to share with you. What we did is recognized and rewarded for these creative ways of being a better organization. And when we did so, they gained ownership of that operation. It was theirs. So the question I would ask of you would be this, and it really becomes staff's idea. If you were to open up a vision or an idea that simply says, is there better ways we can do business? And if the city then, through this recognition process, if the council agrees, it simply says, we will then put a pot of money available that through the analysis of that, it proves that it's going to make a difference, typically financially, oftentimes through throughput. It could very well be that there's a real difference. Example would be this one. A conversation Matt and I had, or Jason and I had, talked about janitorial service. You were about to lose 3 janitors. In the course of that conversation, it was suggested maybe we ought to consider going to a contractor and having a contractor come in. We've done that many times in my old job. And because what we gained was that we didn't pay for the health insurance, we didn't pay for the retirement benefits, which was sizable. I just heard Matt make a comment that simply says, the city saved a lot of money because they converted some of the janitorial responsibility to a contractor rather than having employees once they retired or moved on. I'm not sure what that suggestion, if that was put in, what that would save the city, but you know. And if a person was given 5% of that savings as recognition for their idea, or 10%, whatever that seemed to work out, would that be something you think the employees would basically rally around? And more importantly, do you think in doing so, that may by its own nature may help to gain ownership to what's going on in the city, feel like they're making a significant contribution? I can't speak to how it is in local government because I've not seen that, but I will tell you in federal government, it's off the charts. And what the savings to the taxpayers is in the billions, if not billions of dollars across the Air Force. Think about that. We found it to be so successful that we encouraged it. In fact, oftentimes, when people were making those kind of recognitions, we brought them in front of the directors or the base commander, and that recognition and that check they earned was done in the broadest audiences that we could to basically say, here's what your creative ideas can do to make a difference. And we basically showed them off and then paid them handsomely for that idea.
So it sounds like, Bob, I mean, that's just maybe goes along with those employee benefits that Matt put up earlier, that it's just another option that could be added to that, that it could be discussed and stuff as another, so you could throw that in that list, but it's part of that. But it goes back to, again, I mean, just like with all of them, like that one, I mean, there's a little bit of cost involved, you know, just like we talked about a little bit of cost in some of the others, but it just goes along with that, those employee benefits.
It may be, Matt, you're not in a position you can discuss it, but I'd be curious to know exactly what the city saved when the recommendation was to go to a contractor versus keeping those three janitorial services going.
I can't be held to this, but what I recall, it was upwards of $70,000.
Okay, $70,000.
Who made that suggestion?
Brandon Edwards.
In my old business, there's a good chance that person could have walked out of that decision with $3,500 in their pocket. Because they just saved the city $70,000.
You knew Brandon Edwards, you'd think, holy.
It'd still be in his pocket.
That's creative. You have to admit it was a great idea. And in my opinion it saved the taxpayers $70,000. And not only 1 year, for every year you keep it under contract, it's a continuation of $70,000.
So if you were to do that, I mean, it would be a one-time bonus.
That's all it is.
Yeah.
That's it.
So if we start looking at ways, you know, are there departments that would have more access to that, or would you assume that all departments could equally access that?
I mean, some departments spend a little bit more money than others.
Because on some, I guess I'm specifically looking at like fire and police. I mean, they can come up with ways to save money, but does it compromise safety? Does it compromise?
That's what the analysis determines. If the analysis determines if you're giving up public safety for an idea, then you don't do it. But if there's a way by which you could cut back just fuel expenses, maybe the answer, Jeff, would be this. Hypothetically, you roll onto an accident. Sometimes you roll in there with the big trucks. Could you roll in with a smaller truck? And if you did that on, say, 15 runs or 21 runs a year, because the analysis shows, what's just the cost savings on that? And if you determine there's a fuel savings related to that, how much that savings would be, and if that's an idea that the senior staff agrees to, that there's a benefit to that and it's been documented, would that be something that your team would come in there and say, this is such a great idea that we're going to reward one of your people who come up with that idea with a $1,500 or $500 check for that great idea?
I don't know. if I'm the victim, send them all. Send them all, man.
Well, I just.
Even the parks guy, send them all.
I just remember, Jeff, today, and rightly so, you had pretty well, looks like all your groups down on 5600. It looks like a brush fire or a structure fire going on just a few minutes ago. That road was packed, there were vehicles all over the place. Obviously, the intent would get that down. That's pretty justifiable. But on 5600, on 6000 and 3500 a few minutes ago, it looks like it was a pretty bad accident at that location. I don't think anybody was critical. I'm sure your police officer was there, Carl, but they could have more likely rolled at the same time, could have rolled a big truck down there, and maybe they didn't need that at that location. I don't debate in terms of what rolls, what doesn't roll. I don't debate any of that, but I will tell you this, in all fairness, sometimes it's not just how it's operating, it's what you purchase. There are things out there that may be more efficient, more effective, and less money. And all it takes is a policy adjustment to allow them to be legal that could save your department thousands of dollars. If your people know those things and you're receptive to those ideas, would you be willing to cut them a check for $100 and say, great idea, we reward you for your contribution? Not me to decide, but for you to think about, okay? Because I'm telling you, it's incredible what you can get out of the imagination of people that know more about this business than we know. They're pretty smart people out there. You might be surprised at what they come up with. And if you like what they like with, you think it might be a benefit for them to gain some financial benefit and recognition as a result, I can tell you it works. Something to think about.
Well, I think the idea is a good idea. It's kind of like when we had the secretary say, don't hire and fill the vacant position in records. We even floated the idea of some reward there, and Kathy's response was, it's their job to tell us that. So just changing the mentality helps.
Yeah, I think we'd have to change that
Yeah.
mentality, because again, if the public says, if you could do it without, or, why do we have to reward somebody, just like you said a little while ago, to come up with that idea? So we have to be thinking both sides of that.
Here's the reason, and it's really a fundamental thought process. Typically recognition, I went to some college management courses, and that's what I remember is this one. It's centered on this idea that says that the company used to, when it's doing real well, used to give every employee within the company a turkey for Christmas. And then people began to expect that turkey every year for Christmas because it was just expected. They forgot to tie the recognition for performance to the recognition of the turkey. So when the company went through lean times, the company could no longer afford to give everybody a turkey. And there was outrage in the public. And the outrage in the public for the employees is because they had expected it. Because it was just this expectation given versus the recognition for performance. The separation there is, are we basically given it because it's expected? Or are we given it because of performance? I promise you, if you go up there and give a bonus to your employees because of performance and show them where they made a difference, it'll mean a lot more to them than just expecting it every year. Because once it reaches the point of expectations, then you owe it to them. They lose, the reward is originally identified. If I have a concern, it's only that we don't simply just make this an expectation, but rather to give it to them because they earn it. And once they earn, they can continue to earn it. But there has to be a performance connection to that. Otherwise, you can stand on a stage and you can just throw away money because it's expected. And I promise you, okay, I promise you, every year they will wait for someone to step up on that stage and give them the money. Don't know where it came from, don't know why they got it, only that they're expecting it. Change the dialogue. Earn it. Show performance. Let them earn it, and I promise you, they'll keep earning it. Something to think about.
Any more comments?
I probably have a question.
Sure.
That I've been talking to Jeff a little bit about, that, you know, we need to sometime resolve, in that there was a look to look at 1/3 of our employees for 3 years and look at that, and I committed to Jeff that I would bring that up, because we put that out there and we haven't done anything with it. And he has been looking at, you know, that as a possibility. Now, I'm not saying that we have to or we don't have to, but I'm saying that I did commit to bringing it up. So I'm going to bring it up for thought.
I'm glad you did, because I've been thinking about it too. And I think when we were discussing it, I think it was a really good idea, and it shows that we were being committed to the employees. But I now worry that, let's say that we take this third and we can do something with them, but then when we get to the next third,
We don't have it.
yeah, it's gone downhill, you know? We're in a recession and now we can't do anything. And that's, I guess, my biggest fear, is that we are not able to maybe be.
I've done quite a bit of checking just in the last couple of days,
Oh,
because
good.
Jeff asked me to too. And what I'm hearing in many departments is they're saying, because of the availability of employees, I checked with some of our very local agencies, and they're saying, you know, we could keep upping and trying to whatever we want to call that, compete with our outside agencies. But in doing that, what Jeff and I talked about is that we're really competing with our inside agencies for the dollars that we have. We can't, and what I'm hearing, and it's not, it doesn't always show in what they're doing. They're saying they're going to weather the storm and just see and try to stay stable, and then what happens in reality is they raise their salaries and we're in trouble. But that's what I'm hearing they're saying. Now, Jeff might tell you something different. I said I would bring it up, and I did. The other piece is, you know, he is indicating that he's struggling to find quality employees, not just to find employees, but quality employees. And so, you know, I'm throwing that concern out there, and how do we address that?
Yeah.
And maybe what the mayor just said, maybe we incentivize them for quality or training or certification or whatever, and get them up to speed more quickly, and maybe that becomes part of who Roy is rather than salary. I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there.
Well, let me offer a thought, Jan. On this conversation I had, I think Jeff and Carl were engaged in that at one time, because Jason was the city manager. I sit on the 911 board, and the 911 board recently, we passed this as an incentive. They call it a retention bonus. If a person gets 5 years in the organization at 911, the district gives them either a $5,000 cash bonus, or takes $10,000 and puts it in 401k. So every 5 years, they get an extra $10,000 added to a 401k. 401k. And the intent of that is that they're adding to the retirement. The argument that came out of that is it was much more cost effective for them to do that in terms of retaining their public service people down there than the alternative of continue losing. And they found some benefit to that. It's actually starting to work. So the question you may want to ask would be is, Jeff, Carl, because it was a public safety issue, and Ogden police officers are doing it today. There's an effort that simply says maybe the incentive needs to be something a little different that adds to a retirement, and by retention they keep them because they get a bonus to their retirement, a separate retirement plan other than their Utah service retirement. Don't know if that'll work here, but it's working for them down at 911. And the challenge then becomes, is that something that might work? If it's something that might work there, is it something that could work in the other departments? I don't know what the trade-off is going to be. I don't even know what's going to happen when they move to 25-year and 50% retirement under what appears to be coming next year. But if there's a way by which we can change the dynamics of this, we might be able to make something better and help improve that. But I will tell you this, you don't have to watch the papers, just read the papers, what's happening district after district, that way of putting it, city after city. All of them are basically going in, not all of them, but a lot of them going in for tax increases this year. Either they're going to pay for teachers, or they're going to pay for public safety, or they're going to pay, and it's building, Salt Lake included. And the problem we're having is we can't compete right now in terms of a Salt Lake enterprise that pays maybe $5 or $10 more an hour. I don't know what they pay, but when I talk to my fellow mayors, they're saying it's off the charts in Salt Lake. And the surrounding community are having trouble. I talked to a council member when I was down in St. George down there, and she said that they are 18 police officers under in Draper, and they can't fill them. And I know we're hearing on Facebook one of your police officers indicating, Carl, you got the same problem. We can't fill some of our police officers. Jeff, we keep seeing your people coming through over and over again, which means you got a turnover. There has to be a solution. And I'm not sure what the solution is, because we're literally just increasing and increasing and stepping and stepping. I just heard this last time, Jeff, correct me if I'm wrong, but you're able to bring a couple of people back. And if it wasn't you, it was you, and brought them back into the service of Roy.
Yeah, I'm happy to talk about that, because we're definitely in a tough position right now. And so I ran the numbers with Matt. So Ogden City spent almost $900,000 on that. Ogden City did, for the police department and fire department retention program. They're still losing people. Ogden City's down 7 paramedics right today. So I'm just testing for their captain today. So, and I've talked with some of their guys leaving. It's the money that's putting the food on the table that's making the difference. And so, and I have a 42% turnover rate in our fire department. I've had some of those come back. I have 2 paramedic slots open now that I can't fill with qualified applicants. And the fix is our wages we're just not even competitive to bring people here that want to work here in public safety. I am not, for me particularly, I am not competitive. I can't, and I can't retain the people I have. So some of the option I'm looking at is right now I've just interviewed everybody for the paramedic position we had. I had 7 put in. 1 was a part-timer, 1 used to work here full-time, left for Kaysville Fire Department, makes $3.25 more an hour. It averages out to almost $800 a month, and I can't match his pay to bring him back here, even though he wants to come back. The other applicants are bad. 1 got fired from Sandy City. We don't want him here. I don't want him in our workforce. They're going to cause, and I know Carl's been the same way, trying to hire a police officer. He's had people come through that are just not qualified. And so I don't know the answer either, but I do know that if we don't throw something at it, my proposal, I've been working on this for a year, and I've tried to have work sessions on this and bring it to the forefront and try to get attention with it on trying to do some things. And we've come up with a lot of ideas and have done a lot of things internally to try to help the best we can. But what it comes down to, if you talk with my guys over there, it's the pay. They're leaving for the money. And it's not even leaving for money down south. I've lost a couple down south, but the last 2 I lost in the last 3 weeks was 1 to Ogden City and 1 to Brigham City.
So let me ask you this question, Jeff. I'm just going to hypothetical.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Did the Brigham City guy leave for money?
he did, for money. Yeah. Well, he left for a couple reasons. He lives in Brigham City.
Yeah.
But we hired him down here. He was very confident that he wanted to stay here. And that was the deal. But Brigham City pays their paramedics, my starting paramedics about $15.40 an hour, and he'll make about $19 at Brigham City.
If we basically went up there and took a program, I'm just going to throw one out there and say, Roy Days.
Yeah.
We're basically paying about $110,000 in Roy Days. If we just cut that budget to 50% and we freed up $50,000, Would that fix your problem?
Well,
Got money to fix it.
we can throw the money out. You know, Matt, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but we have access to the money. It just depends on how we want to use it, where we want to put it. So for me, $50,000 would put a big dent and fix my problem. Would help me keep people here. So
I assume you have a similar problem?
It would be, yeah.
I think the conversation is going to be, and an ultimate conversation would be is that there's really two choices. Either we cut services or we raise taxes. If we cut services and figure out what is no longer really critical for us, so that we're paying for the things that are critical, then the impact is minimal to the taxpayer.
I think eventually, like you said, Mayor, if you look at like even South Salt Lake, just saw in the paper last week doing a 31% tax increase just strictly for fire and PD. Washington Terrace is doing it because they're trying to keep their fire guys. South Ogden City's making a change this year to their pay structure. Ogden City's even doing a 3% increase on their top end of their fire department this year. And so there is a public safety issue and a retention issue, not only in Roy City, but there is an issue statewide. And the issue that we have is what kind of people do we want to be running the street, right? And what kind of liability do I have on the street with 2 brand new paramedics running fire calls and responding to calls and treating patients and doing those kind of things. I would never want to propose taking Roy days away. I don't necessarily know if that's the answer, but eventually down the road, I think there is going to have to either be a truth in taxation or a tax increase to help offset those costs of providing those services and having quality people to do. I can hire people, but I guarantee they're not people you're going to want come to your home. I wouldn't want them coming to my house. That's why I haven't hired them in my department, because that's not who I want coming to people's doors, you know, and treating people. So it's a tough position. It doesn't take much technically to help my problem. I am bleeding right now, and I get it, and I understand the tough position that the city's in trying to come up with a solution, but it is tough.
If I think about, though, my medical care goes up every single year. So if I say I have to have a truth in taxation in order to increase that and raise those taxes, because it just does. And the fact that we didn't for X number of years and raised it a huge amount, I know that. So we've got to systematically start thinking about raising those taxes every year. Just like my medical costs go up, just like my gas costs go up. They do, if you want good medical care.
I understand that, but I had a conversation with Matt, and we brushed along this line that a home in Roy is worth X compared to a home in some other place is Y. So we're always going to be at a disadvantage if we're even increasing taxes at the rate they are. And so...
But if we're not increasing them at all, we're going to be in a much more serious disadvantage.
I agree that all along, there should have been a small truth in taxation every single year. My biggest thing is, it's just like, so South Ogden raises theirs, Brigham City raises theirs, Clinton raises theirs, they raise theirs. Where does this bubble end? Where does this end? Because none of these cities can keep affording to keep raising these salaries for, you know, then we got to raise them, and it's like we're chasing something to be able to afford these salaries. That's what I'm worried about, is that it's going to blow. Something's going to happen, because everyone can't keep raising their salaries to keep chasing that.
In terms of that comment, the reality is government should not compete against government.
I agree.
The answer would be is legislation at the state level needs to fix all salaries, just like they fix all salaries for state workers. They need to fix all salaries for municipality and county workers. If they don't do that, then the bigger municipalities are going to drain the smaller municipalities who do not have the resources dry.
Well, the problem is that when the economy's good, people don't want to be cops and firemen. And
It's true.
that's when the salaries
Or
go up.
teachers.
We have kept salaries artificially low for years and years, and now, we're 600 cops down in the state. Yeah, they're gonna go to the higher, and until the economy drops, cities are going to have to increase what they're paying. That's just economics.
And the only way to increase that would be to raise some taxes.
Or cut services. Matt's telling us is that's not going to happen under this budget. But my opening comment will be, it will happen in the next budget.
Well, Mayor,
Because the
and,
realities are coming at us fast.
yeah, and I'm gonna kind of go against that, not to be rude here, but I'm just throwing out the conversation, that I disagree with that. And we've had conversation with that. I'm at the point now where I can't wait. I'm looking at something to make an adjustment in my budget to fix my problem. And I don't know what to do. And we've looked at different things without upsetting other employees in the city on how to address that issue and fix that issue. I know the PD, the police department a few years ago, I don't know who was in it, the city made an emergency adjustment on the PD side to adjust that, to adjust the needs that the PD was having at that time. I'm not necessarily asking for that. I am at a point, but I don't know what the answer is. All I know is I got a 42% turnover. I can't bring in paramedics. I'm not competitive in the pay scale, and I don't know what to do about it. It will get worse if we don't address the problem and figure out a way to fix it. Like today, I had one of my deputy chiefs running the paramedic truck because I don't have staffing. I don't have paramedic staffing. So we're at the breaking point of where if I don't do something with wages to try to either keep the people I have from leaving, then all I'm going to do is keep stressing the employees I have, and they're going to turn around and go, you know what, it ain't worth it. I'm tired of being here, and now I'm going to go to West Jordan or Sandy or Ogden City, where I don't have to be stressed out because of what's going on here. And there's been a lot of talk when this wage study went through that the employees, I'll be honest with you, the employees were under the impression that something was going to come out of this wage study. And it hasn't. And I get it every day in my office of the complaining on how come we're not getting anything, or why isn't anything being fixed. And I keep telling my guys, please be patient. We're working on it. We're working through the system. We're working through the budget. And to be frank, they're tired of hearing that from me because,
So here's the council, okay? Do you want to declare a truth and taxation meeting this year? Because I'm hearing.
We don't need
unless
to
we
do
fix
that.
I don't know if we necessarily
We
need to
don't
do
need to
one
do
this
that.
year, Mayor. Next year, we may have to, but
I think we do one systematic.
I think we will eventually, we are going to have to do one. I don't necessarily know we need to do it this year. I've talked with Matt a little bit, and I'll let Matt speak for himself, but I know we can find money to fix this. I don't know if we have enough to do everybody in the city, and I get that's a really tough decision to make, and I don't want to put anybody above anybody else, but with a 42% turnover rate and not bringing in paramedics, I don't know what to do,
Okay, Jeff, we got a conversation going.
Yeah.
Ross, I'm going to put you on the spot here. Ross needs to get $42,000 to buy a new truck for his deputy. Is there an extra vehicle around that a deputy can drive around in for a year or two until we can afford a $42,000 truck and redirect that funds to help you solve your problem?
There is, and I even talked with Matt.
If it come out of the general fund, it doesn't help if it comes out of Class C.
So is it coming out of Class C funds?
Between Class C.
Yeah.
Well, he's got it in his budget, you've got the 30,000.
Let me answer
Well,
some of the
not like-
questions going forward, though,
Yeah.
because I think we're throwing a bunch of stuff out
Yeah.
that's not really answered. The fact of the matter is, there is a lot of employee turnover in the fire department. I think everybody sees that within their department. I get that Jeff, right now, is feeling the brunt of that. You have it in the 75% turnover ratio in the courts. Last year, you had 3 of them leave. In the finance department, you're looking at literally 2 people there that's been over there longer than in their position than 2 years. It's the fact of what's going on in the economy, but right now I don't like to say that because there's a difference between a utility clerk making a mistake and a paramedic making a mistake. there's a clear difference, but I don't want to minimize the importance of a utility clerk here, because they are very important people here. But back to the matter of saying a third and a third and a third through the organization, you have to define what is competitive. We've tried to come forth with other innovative plans to come to benefit the fire department, but it comes down to, do we have the money long-term? Because you're talking about funds coming into the city and what's going to happen next year, what's going to happen the year after. We set our priorities right now as the merit system, but with that being said, that doesn't leave room in the budget for COLAs. If you give a COLA to all the employees, you're going to give that same COLA next year. Not saying that you have to give them another COLA, but if you increase the salaries by $50,000, you're going into next year with $50,000 more in salaries. And so that's that much more. All the economic indicators are saying that we're going to go for in a downturn. Now what that means with the city is a 37% tax increase, was about $750,000, identical to the sales tax decrease we had in 2008. So if we have that decrease, then what happens? If we have the status, and that's just to remain status quo, so we're really looking at it long term, but the problem is Jeff has a big problem here. I get it. Other departments have the same problem, it's just maybe not as crucial and maybe not as recognized as Jeff is. But to say that we give Jeff the money, is that going to say something to Carl? Or is that going to say something to Ross's employees, Travis's employees? As a body, like Jan was mentioning, you were concerned about the other people, but we do have a big problem here. But to say a third and a third, back to the original question of a third, and a third, what good is it if you can't help it? And when we did the salary survey, it depended on how aggressive we wanted to be with that salary survey. It was more of a tool that took in different parameters. If you take it to the parameters of people within the geographical location of the city, it looked like we're doing fairly well, that we're a little bit more competitive. Jeff isn't losing people to Clinton. Jeff isn't losing people right here. Jeff could start if Clinton starts being more aggressive with their pay scales. Jeff is losing people to Kaysville. I don't know how we can compete with Bountiful. Their house median is probably 4 times as much as us. If you look that Kaysville, Clinton, a lot of those places don't even provide paramedic services. We're providing that service in-house. Clearfield isn't providing paramedic services.
And so if you look
and that's where he's really, really hurting.
So if you look at that, the whole idea of, I mean, you said we saved a whole lot of money to outsource our what was it?
Janitorial services.
Our janitorial services. Maybe we start to look at the possibility of outsourcing our paramedic services.
Well, how that works is we already do kind of technically, but the county offsets that cost. So county gives Roy City $320,000 a year to run a paramedic program. And I'll tell you right now, we do not want to lose that program. That program brings in a lot of revenue to the city, and we start talking about outsourcing paramedic program, it's not good. Once you lose that, there's cities across this state fighting to get paramedic programs, and we don't want to lose a paramedic program. That's extremely difficult. We run an intercept. We run the most cost-effective paramedic intercept program in the whole state that we run in Weber County. You can't get any more cost-effective than we run it in Weber County.
Question.
Yes.
The projects that are underway, like the assisted living center, the townhomes on Main Street, when does that money start to drop into our coffers?
So once they start paying on that tax increment, then they'll start, so most likely next year,
So
that one will be coming into the coffers for next budget year. A lot of that money, though, we have to understand that we're trying, the merit system, when our revenues are here and we're funding the merit system year after year, that's where a lot of this residual, all these
So it has
monies
to
are
go
going
up
to. So
every
it has
year.
to go up every single year. So if we say this one business, we've already obligated ourselves to do a merit system. So we could choose to do away with the STEP program and go away and go into more of a COLA system. But that was something that we've done in the past as promises.
How long have we been on this merit system? I'm just,
I want to say 3 years.
3 years, this will be the third
Oh,
year.
okay.
This will be the third
so this would be
year.
the
So
third.
when we did the tax
Is it
increase,
working?
I think.
Well,
I
the
think
other
it's been
problem
very
is that
beneficial
he's
to
got
the
people with
employees, yes.
23 years that are on step 13 because they went for this long with nothing.
And the steps fix the
So the
compression.
merit
Right.
fixes some of that. I mean, they know that year after year after year, they're gonna go up that step, at least now, where
But
they didn't for
Didn't we
years
approve
and
something
years.
last year that basically allowed the steps to compress?
Correct.
Now
So
you can hit top step in 12 years?
Yeah,
That
right
was-
now, it's a 12-step system, that is correct.
But let me speak about that for a second too, because we did the step system. It was 18 years across the board. It was 2%, 2.25, 2.25, up to 5 years, 2.5. So that was across the board for everybody.
Oh, okay.
With that, we put everybody in their steps. We're only able to fund it with the tax increase that we did at 80%. So let's say you were supposed to be a 12, maybe you're going to be a 10, somewhere around there. But then, when we implemented the public safety step system and took it from 18 to a 12, by the mathematics of it, they didn't get a raise out of that. So now, they're going to be down even a little lower in the step system. So employees had a perspective of saying, I should be at a step number 9 because I have 9 years, but I'm a step number 6. And that's where Jeff
Or
is saying,
5.
or a 5, or whatever it may be, because of the mathematics, and you're not throwing more money at it. But as you know, when we put employees up as far as we did, that was $750,000. It's not even attainable to try to fix. We did some benefit, but in a perfect world, you could have fixed it up to par, but you really don't have the money to do that.
My understanding was, and tell me if I'm wrong, Chief, that also eradicated what we had done to fix.
Well, the way
The
we
police
fixed our
department.
problem was we're bringing people in laterally. We don't bring them in at the bottom of the scale. If they're a 10-year officer, we bring them in equal to where our 10-year officers are now, and that fixed our problem.
Yeah, but
And it's given us, we went from 2.5 years experience on the street to about 8 years experience on the street now.
the thing with it though is your internal 10-year people need to be making 10-year step 10 wages, and mine aren't, because I'm not competitive laterally, and that's the reason why.
Yeah, I mean, we
Yeah.
bring them over to where our 10-year officers are,
Yeah.
whatever our average is.
We tried to
And
too, but
That did fix our problem, because we've stolen from every department. You've seen when we hire them, we're stealing from everybody, including Ogden, just by doing that.
and we are doing lateral transfers, but we're not getting laterals come here. So I do get some that try to come over, but I can't, if I do, I'm paying them more than the current employees I would have to have it benefit them. Like, I could bring them over, but the pay, they're still losing pay. Like, I gave you the example of the guy from Kaysville. I mean, he can come over as a lateral, but I can't pay him more than the same guy that's in the same wage he is, and it's actually a pay cut for him to come here.
Well, we will never compete with Kaysville. Kaysville's paying Salt Lake wages. So if we lose people to Kaysville, we'll never be able to keep them in Roy. And the same thing with Brigham. They're paying outrageous because that's what they want to do. There's certain places where we're going to lose people to, and I don't know that.
Oh, we will. Yeah, there's no doubt about it, and we will lose people. And I don't think there's a 100% fix of not losing people, because that's just part of the deal. But
Chief, what's your turnover rate right now?
We basically fixed it. We have an opening now that we can't fill because we can't get quality candidates. But
other than that, you're,
we lost what, about 15% this year. But that's now expected. You're expected to lose
well,
in
you're going to
public
lose
safety.
too. Yeah, I mean.
It used to be you lost 1 or 2%. Now it's expected you're going to lose at least 15% a year. That's the industry standard now.
Okay, Matt, what do you want to do?
I mean, Jeff and I have had multiple conversations about this, and it's hard because we talked about throwing money at it, is that really fix the problem? And is that going to make it any better for us? So I was like, can we come up with some other creative ideas on how to fix it? And I mean, there's been just a couple of them. The mayor brought up bonuses in retirement, and then Jan brought up cash to trainings and certifications faster to get them more up to speed so they're not quite a newbie. I would like to see if we could do some creative.
And that was
ideas.
that was some of the, in the middle of the presentation, trying to come up with creative ideas, knowing that you can cut or you can raise taxes, because there's not a whole lot of things that you can do in between that. And so when we look at their budgets, we really try to go through them, but there's a lot of topics in there that if you were to cut, they could be pretty problematic as well. But the alternative is a tax increase, and this is not the year we're doing it.
Well, and if you look at, for us, Mike Elliott gave away 2 officer positions before I got here. So you could say we did cut personnel there. So we're down there, we're down another officer, but, you know, my captains and deputy chiefs are working patrol shifts every week. You know, that's what we do. That's how we make up for our shortfall.
In a perfect world, I wish we could give everybody everything, but it's just not a perfect world right now. And we're trying to do as best as we can with the promises in the budget, with the promises that we've made in the past.
So let's, oh, sorry, Matt.
Our pay scale, we're a little bit more aggressive than some agencies. Some of the minimums are lower than other agencies. We're all different. Our benefit package is somewhat different than other agencies. The morale is different than other agencies. We provide other benefits to the organization that other agencies don't benefit. I know that Jeff has a really strong department with morale, that people love to work for Roy City. I mean, I'm kind of in the boat too. I'm a Roy boy and I stick by it. I like Roy City. You got a lot of that throughout the organizations that they choose because they just like Roy City. But there's not one fix for everything. And I can't tell you what's going to happen in 2 years. I can't tell you what's going to happen in a year. I can't tell you that we're not going to have to do, in order to stay status quo, a pretty hefty property tax. I can't foresee what's going on, but the economic indicators are saying the forecast isn't very healthy.
No.
And like Chief Marino was suggesting, is that a benefit to Roy City when it goes down? A lot of the other cities right now are growing rapidly, and they're getting a lot of money in these building permits and things like that we're not seeing because we're a little bit more built out. Some of these other organizations are going to hurt a little bit more because they're not going to see that rapid growth either. So we're in a pretty good spot if something were to happen, because we're not held to that standard of getting that income. But we do have to worry about property tax, or worry about sales tax. Another thing going on right now in the legislative is taxes in general is going to be an open-ended question next year. It could dramatically change. If they change something like a bill proposed this year of 75% instead of the 50% population on sales tax, Roy City would make out like pretty good with that.
Oh, yeah.
Substantially. They could change the property taxes and get off the table with that. If they change the way, because as we talked before, property tax, you have to do a tax increase just to maintain your rate. That's not off the table. You never know what's going to happen. And so next year, we could be a lot more better off than this year. But we don't know that until then. But right now, I see that Jeff has a problem. I see that other departments have a problem. There's things that we cut in the budget. There's personnel that we cut in the budget. Other people are hurting. But the bottom line is, if there's only so much money to do, there's only so much we can do. So I don't know if
So I
there's a
keep
good answer.
hearing, Matt, and correct me if I'm wrong, I keep hearing that he has the money in his budget to fix his problem. Is that correct?
Well,
Jeff?
not in my budget. Me and Matt have had conversations on this, that we can get the money to make some adjustment, but that would come out of the overall budget.
For the overall budget.
Okay, and so then next year, it would have to come out again as part of the budget.
That's correct.
It couldn't come out as a one-time fix.
No, it would be ongoing, you know? Yeah,
So-
you'd have
So
that.
that's the problem.
You'd have
right there,
that,
the
yeah, if you add it
ongoing.
to wages, then that increases that's there every year because you just if you increase the wages by 50,000,
So,
then that would increase.
so the question is, what if it's not there the next year? Then you're in worse shape than you are by.
Well, at that point, then we look at, like you said, you look at either, where you get to the point where you're either looking at tax increase or you're looking at truth in taxation to keep that moving up so you have it. We did increase, we increased $16,000 in the budget this year from the county, from Weber County, that
But
helps
what I'm
offset our
hearing is
paramedic fund.
to even fund the merit that we have currently, we might have to look at a truth in taxation. So that wouldn't help to fund an additional, is that correct?
That's correct, that's the pitfall.
Yeah.
Is the way you can come up with money in the budget is becoming a little bit more aggressive in your revenue. So $50,000 in a $28 million budget is really kind of a little bit of money. It's really more of a rounding thing.
Well,
$28 million, but you don't want to look at it like that. You put your projections at where you think they're going to come in at.
You got 3.5 in fund reserves.
Yeah.
So you got 3.5 million sitting there. We hold just in case of emergency.
Yep. So if you were to spend that 3.5 on an ongoing issue, you're going to suggest that you're going to take that 3.5. Theoretically, next year we'd have to take 3.5 more and more. And then it goes against what? The 18%. And that's something that we could look at and take a draw from fund balance for a one-time use. But knowing
It's
that
not
it's
a
going,
one-time use.
and that's exactly what I was just going to say. It's not a
It's a
one-time
gift that
use.
keeps on giving.
That's what,
It's not a one-time use if we put it in there. Is that correct?
yeah, well, yeah, it would be like if you adjust, so technically what my proposal would be anywhere from a 1 1/4 to a 2% pay adjustment in the pay scale. And I'm not talking about the chief pay scale or my deputy chief pay scale. I'm just talking my operation guys, not affecting me or my deputy chiefs at all. It's my operation guys. Matt and I ran the numbers on that. It's anywhere between 42 to about 50,000 bucks.
But it's 50,000 every year,
Wait.
not one time.
No, it's not one time because you'd have to increase the budget to pay that. So it'd be 50, and then that overall budget would increase by $50,000. So next year you'd have to put the same amount in,
So we can't
Anytime
fix
you
yours
increase
one
budget.
time and then another third next time, because then it's not 50,000, then it's 50 plus their 50. Or their
Yeah,
100.
if you, anytime
And
you
then the
adjust
next year
wage, yeah,
it's-
anytime you adjust the
it's one-
wages.
It's 50 plus 50 plus
Sure,
another 50.
sure.
So it's not, it looks like it's fixing one problem, but it's not.
Well, one of the issues we have here as far as, one of the other issues we have is the non-adjustment in COLA too, with the merit system that keeps wages moving in an upward fashion, I guess, per se. It keeps the
Yeah,
wages
it's-
moving up.
Yeah. 'Cause it
So
doesn't- it
that puts
doesn't-
you in
it
a
doesn't
spot,
re-
keeps you stagnant.
Yeah, it doesn't change the base. The employees are moving up in their pay scale.
yeah.
But when we
But it doesn't
when we said
adjust
we were going to do some of
the
these
wages.
things, they're very costly. And it's been hard to come up with the money. And that's, what Jeff came up with the 16,000. It takes a collaborated effort. Brandon came up with this other increase. We're taking this money and we're putting it toward the merits, basically. So every shortfall that we have, and then you have employees, frankly, that are retiring in the higher rate, coming
You're
in
bringing
lower,
in newer.
and that helps out too. But eventually, there's going to be progression in their pay scales as well. But really, there's just not a lot of wiggle room in the budget. I wish there was, but you just don't know what's going on in the future.
To me, it looks like,
Easy fix.
like was said, we have to look at an increase in taxes.
That would raise sales tax even more than what we are. I mean, because.
Either way,
we-
taxes are taxes.
Taxes are taxes. You
Yeah,
have
but
to-
one is a tax you freely give. The other one, property tax, isn't one. You know what I mean?
Yeah, right now we're getting a lot more money in sales, well, most cities get a lot more money in sales tax.
Oh, yeah.
Because the economy is good.
Because the economy is good. You've seen it.
I spend more
increase
money.
A lot of money, and so it's not the same as in 2008. We're
Yeah.
$1 million more now in property taxes than we were in 2008, and yet we had that big downturn in property taxes. The bottom line is when the economy drops, or sales tax is going to drop, property tax will not. It's more stacked, which is beneficial,
Well,
but it's just not as much money.
it's an election, a presidential election year. And any time it's an election year for the president, there's a recession. People pull back until they know either who it's going to be, but just their nature. And so as a result, if we raise everything and then there's a recession, we're going to be in double trouble, right? Because we won't.
Last time,
Systematic. That's how I feel.
So-
No, I think truthful tax.
so put this in another perspective. In 2008, when the recession started hitting, one of the things that happened is when employees left, they didn't get it back. This year, we're proposing that Ross gets a deputy director. That was taken out in 2008. And it's taken this long to be able to get it back into the budget. But with that, we're becoming a little bit more creative in the funding mechanisms for that position, because it's such in utilities and things that it's not being affected by as much with the police and fire and stuff. Yes, it is coming up with some of it, but not all of it. There's also a reduction in force with the superintendent as well, that most likely this individual will be a superintendent, and that's where some of that surplus is coming from. And so there's a little bit of an offset there. But just to put it in perspective, in 2008, we cut a position, and we're just barely getting it back, and 10 years later. That's how we got through the recession last time. Is I wasn't here, but I know Travis and Ross were both here.
Well, in the meantime-
And Jeff was here during it, just not as a department head.
And in the meantime, the city has grown, the requirements for the services have grown, he's needed more help.
And so that's how they made it so they didn't have to have layoffs or anything, because they just didn't fill positions.
Jan, you put the discussion on the table. Did you get the discussion you wanted out of this?
I heard some discussion. I mean, I don't know how to help Jeff. I don't.
Well,
But-
yeah, and I don't have the answers either. I'll just let you know if we don't do something, it will get worse. It's not going to get better. And it all depends on how we want to run that, what kind of people we want running in the fire department. Either I run without them, and I end up taking units out of service because I can't staff, or we hire poor quality people that creates liabilities for the city, and we're stuck with that. So I can do whatever. I can run the department however you'd like me to run it. That's fine with me. But Matt does bring up a really good point. People do like to work here. I've had people leave and come back because they do enjoy Roy City. They love our atmosphere, and they love what we have to stand for. But I will tell you, the other employees in the other departments probably feel the same way with this wage study. I know my guys was looking at this wage study as something to kind of fix some problem, and a few of them have stuck around to wait to see what's going to come out of this. And if nothing comes out of it, I'm going to lose more. I will. So that's, if we're willing to deal with that and work with that, then I can do it, and that's okay. That's just where we're at.
Remind me, what did the wage study say? Only
So-
because, when did that?
To kind of go back to the very first, and I spoke about this a little bit, sorry to reiterate myself, but what we did is we said a third, a third, and a third. We didn't do it for 2 years. The third year, we decided to do it for everybody. We hired an outside contractor to come in independent and to do more of an analysis on the entire system as a whole. And it's going to bring in multiple factors, but it's a tool. He gave us all the wages across Utah for this, one of the tools, but some of the other parameters was a regression analysis to incorporate other parameters like risk assessment or your job description. And so it made everything work together. And but that being said, it was a tool. When we really narrowed down that tool in a work session, we said we want to be competitive about the agencies here. Locally, we're not competing with Salt Lake, we're not competing with Sandy, we're not competing with all these people. We're talking Ogden, we're talking Layton, we're talking Clinton, we're talking Clearfield, we're talking some of these smaller agencies. And when we put that in the tool, it was showing that we're fairly competitive in most positions. Not all positions, I may add, but some of the hot positions, when you take police and fire, when you look at the agencies that are paying well, you're typically talking some of these larger organizations. But when you look at it in the salary survey, it looked like things were being competitive. But I may add that when we talked about this a little earlier, when I need to hire somebody that has a single position in the city, there's nobody to compare against. If you're not competitive at your minimum amount, you hire them on at a level 2 and you become competitive. There's other people within the organization that's what's happened because they needed to be competitive and get somebody in. Carlos mentioned that he's hired laterals over. There's a lot of people in administration and other departments that have years and years of experience. We don't hire them as a level 18, but they might come in as a level 5. But with that being said, the police and fire, because there's so many people within that same pay range that they're comparing themselves. And they're reluctant to bring somebody in, a 4-year paramedic over a 4-year paramedic that we currently have. And so that's why they're a little bit more constrained. Back to the wage study, when you look at it in administration, that was typically some of the jobs that were struggling a little bit more. And it could have been because of the regression analysis, it could have been because of the agencies that we were looking at. But if we wanted to broaden that view and take into consideration Salt Lake County and Bountiful City and some of these larger organizations, then you're going to look like we're being paid very poorly. But the discussion was had, do we compare ourselves against them? Can we compare ourselves against them? Sure, we can. Do we want to? Do we want to be competitive with them? But it all has to do with what's competitive. But the bottom line is if you don't have the money to fund what we feel is competitive, what do you do?
Well, the other piece I think, Matt, though, that you have that you can't quantify it. I'm hearing that they like the environment here.
Sure.
You
Yes,
you can't put a monetary value on
and that goes to the leadership. It
That
really
does go to
truly
the
does.
Oh,
it. It goes to
absolutely.
what they're hearing, what the climate is, and what they feel about themselves. It may go to what kind of incentives we're promoting within their department. So I think the culture has to change in their minds too. I don't think it can just change by salary. There has to be something. I mean, I've said for a long time, I live in the same household with a person who worked in Davis County Schools. She's 2 years behind me in service, and she always made more than I did in the whole time. Every year she made more than I did, because Davis was paying more than I was.
That's right.
So, but I chose to stay in Weber County because I like the smallness of it, I like the intimacy of it. So there's got to be more than just what we're doing, and we might lose, but we might gain by that too. And I think Chief Marino has said that his department is gained by that.
Well,
They are
certainly, it sounds like
I don't know.
It sounds like we need to bring that turnover number down.
So
But
how do we do that?
I know. Tomorrow I'll make 3 more phone calls for businesses to come locate here.
Matt, do you still want to explore that with your staff that are seeing the certificate and maybe come back to the council with some
Well, maybe specifically we
ideas?
need to talk with the fire department. What could they see other than, I mean,
Absolutely, yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
Yeah, I mean.
I don't know, that's
probably-
going to be math.
Probably creative. I don't know.
Yeah,
Jeff, if we were to throw bonuses in the retirement,
Yeah, again, it's tricky because there's, the hard part with that is there's some people that will benefit from that and there's some that don't. Anybody that's been in the service longer than about 10 years is really not a huge benefit for them. Someone that's starting brand new out in their career, a bonus system like that in their retirement is a huge difference when you hit your 20-year mark. And that's why some of these departments that have put that in place are really focused. I even talked with Tina about this at dispatch, and I talked with Mike Mackey about this long, and the mayor may know a lot more because he sits on that board. But the biggest thing with that was trying to, and you'll even talk with the older dispatchers that are there, are like, that really doesn't benefit me. They understand why they kind of did it and where it kind of came from. But when you look at an employee that's been there 10 years or longer, it's really not, there's really not a benefit there for them for that. So they're not looking at that really as a point of saying, you know what, that's really what's going to keep me here, because there's not a benefit.
Those
down the
retention
road.
benefits?
Yeah,
Saying you're
because
not,
because
the
over
longer they
over
go.
time it's good. If you're a brand new guy that just hired on at Weber Dispatch yesterday or at Ogden yesterday, and then you now you work your whole career there and you get that huge benefit. I mean, you're talking thousands of dollars at the end of your career. But if you're halfway through your career now, I mean, you're not going to get, you won't see the benefit of the compound interest of that in your retirement ever. You'll never make that up. So that's where it gets tricky, because you can either work on keeping the people, finding a solution that'll keep the people you have and keep them there, or you can work on either looking at retention or recruitment. And I would really focus on trying to retain the people I have. And the way you do that is the people that have kind of been loyal with you and have ridden it out. You kind of say, look, this is what the city's doing. We're looking at giving you, we're going to raise it, try to get us a competitive. We're never going to be competitive with South Salt Lake and Salt Lake, but if we do something that shows that we're trying to move in that direction, to be positive with them and say we are doing as much as we can, because in the end we are Roy City, and they understand that. They understand that in the end we are Roy City, and they totally get that. And that's where I think you'll notice the difference. So.
Go ahead.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Jeff, but I thought that's what the merit system was supposed to do, is to support everybody equally. Just in that everybody looks at that.
Yeah, it does, as long as those rates are competitive, and competitive is probably a really bad word, but as long as those rates, right now, if you look at my pay scale as a whole, and we can, I've looked at the wage studies, and Carl and I have talked about this wage study we did in the city, and that's very manipulative on how you can put those numbers together to make them look. But if you pull the wage scales, even from Clearfield City, which is a 2-station department just like us, their starting wages are about $5,000 or $6,000 higher than we are here. And so our top end pay range of our step scale is actually okay, mid to the top end range. Our bottom end is really uncompetitive. The problem with it is I'm trying to retain the people I have, and the way to do that is to move them up into the pay scale a little bit higher so they want to stay here.
But you said our top end is competitive.
Yeah, our top end is good, but I have nobody there.
Is more competitive than other agencies.
Yeah, our top end's okay. Our top end of our pay range is pretty competitive.
And
It's
another
not bad.
thing is just benefits in general. Do we offer a greater benefit to them? But one of the problems that you do have is that millennials might not be looking at that. They don't care about the retirement as much as the older generation. But with all that being said, does that mean we cut the retirement, or
But
not
they
a
don't
good way to
assume
do,
they're
but we
gonna
cut
stay
the
in the
benefits
job
for the
Millennials don't assume
no,
they're
they
going to
don't.
stay in a job.
And that's some of the problems that we've been having as we hire millennials.
Part of the recruitment, Jeff, is, I guess, you guys are going to teach a course at Roy High?
Yeah, and that's,
try and
and you bring up a really good point, because we, the chiefs in this county have gotten together to figure out how we can grow our own.
Right.
Because, a lot of guys, if they come from down south and apply up here, they end up moving back down south, so we don't keep them up here in our county. So this program that we're trying to get back into the schools, when I went through Roy High School, they had the EMT program, and that kind of got you hooked in this area and got you kind of excited about the service. The PD already does a program at the high school that kind of encourages, some of those things that's really popular. So we're actually incorporating a fire science
They've
program.
got one semester filled, I know.
Yeah, we got one filled and maybe another one, and some of that's trying to recruit some of our own in the county and keep them in our county.
Here.
It helped with recruitment a little bit,
So
kind
that's
of down the
already
road.
begun.
Yeah, it
It
started.
will.
That's in the works.
fall. Okay.
Yeah.
Will in the fall.
So we're getting creative in the ways that we're looking at trying to retain or get people interested. You know, the change in retirement was a big hit to our service, and that's going to take a little bit of time before we see the changes in that from the state legislature making the change this year. That's going to just take some time till we really see the benefits of that down the road, but
I just don't know that we can do something today.
yeah.
Matt, what do you want to do?
Catch-22. It really is. You could either chance it and do something and worry about the rest of the city employees of what they're going to think about it, because they're not going to be able to do it potentially next year.
Well, you're gonna
You
have to
could weather
carry
the
it for
storm.
the rest of the time.
Yeah, and you're going to carry it. You could try to weather the storm, but obviously that's very hurtful too. I can't tell you what's going to happen in the future. I'm trying in this budget, trying to maintain what we promised that we said we would do in the first place, rather than add to it. It's not a good year for tax increases. I can see that. So you're leaving me as an administrator with very little options, because I'm not going to be slashing everybody's budget and slashing major things either. And so it's a catch-22, and I honestly am at odds with it. It's a struggle.
Well, okay, council. The issue is right now is that we had the work session, we talked a lot of important things. Matt has to take away the comments from this, decide whether or not he'll make the modifications, if there are modifications to your recommendations. And he'll present a updated budget. When are we going to see the next revision? Because there's some changes I offered, you need to make some changes to.
With verbiage and stuff. So really, when it comes down to it, we put that toward the council and council packets when we approve the budget.
Okay, we'll see that when? May, come in?
Well, it comes in June. We
Yeah.
can get it back out there. A lot of it has to do with our tax rate. We have to approve the budget with that tax rate. That's objective to when the state gets it out there. We would like to do it the first meeting in June.
Okay.
Most likely, it's going to be the second meeting in June, because it's usually around the 12th, I believe, which is after our first meeting.
I didn't see a lot of changes in this budget, a lot of recommendation, just some tweaking and modifications. I don't see a major adjustment.
Yeah, the only adjustment that I know of thus far, right, with the financial ramifications of the budget, would be the increases to the mayor and council for merits. Other than that, most of it was just verbiage and direction that the city's going to get for those merits.
Okay.
So really, that's the only financial.
Remind me, just so I can sleep on it, what they're going to receive, I'm talking about the firefighters.
So Jeff,
They're going to receive
3.75.
2.5% increase.
the general employees, and then the police and fire will receive a 3.7.
Oh,
3.75.
I'm sorry, 3.7. So roughly, we're to get you to a level that's livable for a year. Where would we be looking at? Just so
Well, Matt and I have thrown some numbers out, and the 2% was about $50,000.
2% in addition.
To adjust
So it would be
to
a
it.
5.75.
That would adjust the pay scale.
$50,000
It would adjust the pay scale 2%.
$50,000
for
this year, but
budget
also
year,
$50,000 next year
Well,
and the next.
and forever.
Yeah.
If we add it to.
If you add it to
Now,
the wage
why-
budget.
And I'm going to ask you then, is there a strategy to add it to that wage scale? Because a one-time infusion might carry you through the year if we didn't have to.
Well, the idea is to move my personnel up into the pay scale so they're more competitive, right? So they're not going to leave.
$1,700 to $2,000,
somebody over there. Oh, that's all?
$2,600.
Okay, everyone gets like a penny.
Correct.
Oh, there we go.
5% of zero is still zero.
Yeah. That's-
So the two,
Try it.
the 2% cost, when you average out over the employees, was about a 44%, 45-cent increase an hour was the difference, was the 2%.
Of going from 375 to 575.
But to do it as a one-time thing, it won't go in there. It won't be ongoing, but I'm not hearing that they're wanting a one-time thing.
Jeff, are you looking for the whole department at that? Is that what it is?
Well, that would be all my operation guys,
So he's
correct?
including himself.
Everybody that there's deputy chief.
Be no deputies and it's, no deputies or myself, correct? Yeah. It's just my
So-
operations.
So that'd be, what, 30?
It's 33.
Is there a difference in who you're losing, fire versus paramedics?
Well, yeah, I mean, paramedics are definitely more marketable. That's the position that is definitely a lot more competitive because they're wanted. So that's definitely the competitive area.
So
Good
if you
firefighters
just
are
did
the
them,
same way.
what would that do to your department, though?
That's kind of the problem, yeah.
Yeah,
You know.
so you're saying even within a microcosm of the city,
Yeah,
I mean, you're saying we really need our medics, and I'm saying, but we really need our public works too. I mean,
yeah.
your
absolutely.
department is a microcosm of the city.
Well, we need the firefighters too, and they're the ones that work into the, it's kind of the whole realm of it's the fire department as a whole, so, yeah.
But again,
It's like a tire.
The-
You can't cut it in half because it just won't work,
Yeah.
if that makes sense.
but the same thing about the city.
Right. No,
You
I
can't
know.
cut.
That's why I was wondering if I,
The medics do compete a lot more with the hospitals. and
Right,
stuff.
because I see we
Right,
pick them up
of
in a
course.
They
heartbeat.
can go out there and make twice as much money because
That's
they're
right.
not,
You
they're
told me
having
that.
nurse shortages, and so they're hiring paramedics.
Well, Council, you're going to have to think this one through. Let me just go back to a premise. Either cut services or raise taxes.
But we don't
To be able
have to
to meet
do
the
it this year,
requirement.
is that correct?
that's right.
So the
But we
question
need
then
to, we
becomes-
should address this problem. Should we, one way or the other?
How are you gonna address
You
this
can't.
problem?
You do
Well, I-
it for one organization, then you deal with the other 5 organizations, asking why not them. You put a COLA in one organization without doing the other ones, you got a problem. And so I think you still have a manpower salary issue. Here's the question the council needs to consider. Maybe if you're looking for SX funds, maybe you don't have as much money in beautification and you redirect that general funds to something else that pays for salary. Maybe you start looking at cutting some of the cost in the things like Roy Days. Maybe instead of hiring a lot of employees to work the overtime that typically is involved, and there's lots of overtime, because there's lots of things going on, he simply says, I'm going to augment that with 50% of the people being volunteers. If there's strategies out there by which you want to resolve this problem, then I will say then look at the strategies to come up with a solution. But as you stated, unless the council's got the stomach to go through a truth and taxation and make that declaration shortly this year, then increasing taxes is not going to happen. Then if we're going to solve Jeff's problem, and it's not just Jeff's problem, it's going to be every department that basically has a perception that they too have a right to a COLA increase, then you're going to have to look at a broader conversation that simply says, how are we going to fix this? And then find out what funds are available to do that. And if that means we give up something, we just don't do that this year because of it, then that's the solution. Otherwise, council, you've got a budget in front of you. And you have to make a choice whether or not you approve the budget as written and then try to go and address the issue with fire and public safety next year. But you don't have a choice. It's one of the other times run out. So my recommendation would be is, unless you have some other ideas, council, my recommendation would be is Matt walks out of here looking at some alternatives, comes back to the council in the next week or so with some possible alternatives that works within this leadership, and if you like them, we move with those. Otherwise, you approve the budget as written with some minor modifications that Camila was making in terms of some things that she was working. So, given the timeline here, I don't think you have a lot of options. What I did hear from the council, though, and the mayor is, if the council and the mayor doesn't get a salary increase, okay, as a result of this, and you can better use that money for something else, like the people, take it, okay?
I calculated that's about $2,600 for everybody.
It's a start.
Not per person, for everybody. Another thing that I'd like to add with the budget is it's a breathing document. This is not something you can just approve in June, but it is a breathing document throughout the rest of the year.
So you can change.
So, you would like a resolution. I would like a resolution as well, but know that we can't just rush to judgment trying to throw money at something or take something away from another thing just because we're rushing to the judgment of it. We need to be a little bit more meticulous in deciding these things.
Okay. Anything else, council?
Motion to adjourn.
Okay, motion to adjourn. Do I have a
Seconded.
Motion to adjourn. Do I have a second? All in favor?
Aye.
I think I heard 3 ayes. Thanks,
Does that
Matt.
mean everybody wants to leave?